jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show. It's the jacked up review show.
Join us as we cover many an insane movie and numerous cult TV phenomenons. Are you ready to get jacked up? Are you with us? Then listen on.
Listener discretion is advised. It's a jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show.
It's a bird. It's a plane. Look out, Tokyo. It's Godzilla. And here to join in the fun is Daniel, Tortured Souls contributor.
Up from
Ryan.
the depths, 30 stories high.
Yeah.
I hate that show, by the way.
Oh, wrong. Love that show.
Hanna-Barbera,
Great show.
Hanna-Barbera. I never saw it, but all I know is that Blue Oyster Cult just can't stop singing about him. Alrighty, and to join us is fellow Misty and co-contributor to the Reels of Justice podcast, it's Robb Maynard.
How you doing?
Thank you for joining in, man. I was like, hey, you know, these guys are always talking movies. It's a criminal for me to not get them on board, you know, and join the ship.
Yeah, and you're right in my wheelhouse today, talking Toho and Godzilla stuff.
Yeah, there were not many who wanted to touch this one. So, you know, Godzilla is an action, fantasy, horror, sci-fi franchise that's, you know, lasted, you know, over 3 eras, 2 American interpretations, and 4 different Toho eras. One which is currently all anime, and all these movies, that's the beauty of them, because, you know, Sony is both, you know, Japanese and an international company. You can watch them in multiple, you know, regions and coding, and in the case of King Kong versus Godzilla, it's, you know, Universal. The American versions of this are, you know, currently handled by Warner Brothers legendary outlet. So just briefly, I'll let you jump in. Rob, since you're the featured guest, what was it that just appealed about Godzilla? Just how, you know, aside from it being just shown on every antenna channel, you know, easy for guys to get into, like James Bond, just like...
Yeah. Well, I was a James Bond kid too. But I think I started as we had a VHS of Godzilla versus the Smog Monster. Godzilla versus Hedorah in the house. I don't know who bought it. I think that's the only VHS print they did of that film. But we had it in the house, and you know the way, if you hang out with kids, you know the way they watch like Toy Story,
Yes.
and they just watch it constantly. That's the way I was with Godzilla versus the Smog Monster. I just watched it on repeat every afternoon after school, just constantly.
That's all we know. We repetition is like, I do it with cartoons, and Daniel will do it with, you know, horror movies and comedy shows, and so it's just like, that's how your brain is built. It's like, hey, can't get enough of this, and then, you know, eventually you grow up and you realize whether or not you actually consider it of quality or not, or so bad it's good, or, you know, whatever. You know,
I still love it. If I were to put on, you know, the English cut of like Smog Monster, that would be super. That would be perfect for relaxing nostalgia. I mean, I know every line, I know every sound. So yeah, I still like it.
no, all good. And I mean, this is already a campy podcast, so we're gonna have plenty. We're not gonna be as, you know, hardcore as we are with most movies, where it's like, definitely love or hate it. And with Godzilla, I think that is just kind of the overall appeal. Everyone, especially, I keep doing the James Bond comparison because that's just like the easiest one. It's an internationally recognizable icon, and it's impossible to agree on which is the definitive one. We'll get a little closure, hopefully, here because we got free talking heads here, but hopefully we will kind of just give everyone a sense of what is the overall general appeal. Why do we keep coming back to these movies? So, Daniel, what was your first foot stomp into Godzilla territory?
Honestly, just as a kid, I loved monster movies. I love that whole Monster of the Week thing. Like
Universal.
Yeah, Universal, and I'll admit, like Power Rangers or like Voltron, just giant monsters.
Same company, Toho. So there you go.
And Godzilla, he's the OG.
Well, actually, Power Rangers is Toei. Not Toho, but they're Toei. They're
close enough.
I could have sworn they had some of the same production company, but
they may both use Subaraya. They may both use Subaraya, the production company, at least in some of the Power Rangers. But yeah, they're technically Toei.
Damn. Giant monster movies, gotta love them.
Yeah, I mean, shit. Yeah. So, I think that is just what's it, and hopefully with this we can give everyone, millennials, anyone else who's just actually trying to get into these and actually has respect for older movies and is just behind the times but wants to get into them. So then, now this has had, even different cartoon shows based on different versions. It's, again, it's been mentioned constantly. You can't even go even a single rock or rap song without getting at least one, Godzilla song.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a Gorillaz song about him in there somewhere, but so let us tackle the Showa era. Anyone want to give a little kind of closure to this, other than it going from 1954 to 1975, where Godzilla is either, dark black or dark green, or, just varies by appearance?
I mean, that's basically it, right? It's from 54 to 75. It's the first run of the series. It's all one continuity from the original Gojira to the final film in the Showa era, which is Terror of Mechagodzilla. It's all one continuity, one line. And obviously it's low budget, practical effect, rubber suits, strings.
Yeah, I mean, and these are right, but the perfect kind of bizarre. And what's crazy is Akira Kurosawa, and I can never remember his names, his second unit action, reshoot director, who was his OG, sorry to still Daniel's phrasing, on his various, classic movie epics, worked on a lot of these movies, and you end up just getting that general kind of just establishing shots and other, stuff that Tarantino is always ripping off, just doing the whole, just, Bruce Lee type establishing, monsters locking eyes.
Yeah, Ashiro Honda, who does a large number of the show series. Yeah, Ashiro Honda is a very, very competent director. I mean, he's really good, even though, even though he's just filming people in rubber suits on strings.
Most of
he does it intelligently. I mean, most of the people who worked on this movie were able to work on other prestige pictures, right? Like you mentioned, I mean, Honda worked with Kurosawa. But they had stories to tell that they thought they could tell through monsters, at least for most of the run. And they would still say, I'd say they're still hold up as being great films, a lot of them, at least some of the major ones.
For sure. So let's get into it. 1954 sees the very suspenseful first Gojira, also known as Godzilla. Whoever wants to, I'll tell you what. Daniel, if you want to go first, and then I go first, and then Rob goes first. Do you want to work it that way?
Oh, that's confusing. Let's just set one pattern.
Okay, I'll go, then Daniel goes, then you go.
Sounds good.
Okay. So with 54, we got Godzilla by Ashiro Honda. It has suspenseful just creation of, nuclear waste that creates Godzilla. I consider this a very competent, 4 out of 5 instant and a classic just because, you know, for a first time out, it's not shabby. There's a awesome squid fight. The music builds more dread than is actually there, much, you know, like the original Night of the Living Dead. Just, this is classic, you know, monster romp as we can count on. And while there's not many characters that you can think of, it's still just a very just edgy descent into grim fairy tales, for lack of a better word. So yeah, Daniel.
Timeless. This is a real treasure. You know, just it's one of the most influential monster movies ever. And there had been giant monster movies before, like Kong. It came from, you know, 8 fathoms under the depths, but this one set it in stone. This is the real progenitor of the formula.
For sure.
Yeah, I mean, this is the granddaddy of them all. And if this one wasn't good, it wouldn't have inspired 35 sequels.
Because it's so good.
You know, it's a haunting allegory about the consequences of man's delving into nuclear technology. But it also has a compelling love triangle in the front that really holds up, I think. Too. So for me, this is a 5 out of 5. I mean, this is a perfect movie.
It's not just nuclear weapons, it's just new weapons of war as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
Right, very apocalyptic looking, just commentary on how, you know, men are just idiots, just, you know, the weapons end up becoming their own enemy after a while. You get that kind of themes going.
Yeah. But a few brave men, or, you know, in this case, in this film, one particular brave man is able to save the day. So there is still strength in humanity. Very
much so. Godzilla just continually, that is kind of what's always been fascinating about him. Sometimes he's the hero, other times he's the anti-hero, where he's just, you know, the equivalent of a mobster. He's defending his turf because the other mobsters stepped on him, and other times you don't really know what to expect. He's not helping anybody, but he's also not creating any chaos or falling accidentally on a building with 5,000 people. He is just defending people because, you know, it really, the vision varies by filmmaker and inspiration and even era. And in this case, he's the antagonist, but he's also, you know, you're getting the overall sum of its parts. And since this is what they go back to the most, you know, we're going to continually debate on, you know, which ones are suspenseful and which ones are just boring romps that, you know, have only 20 minutes of fighting at the very end. And this one, you know, it's a good payoff. So it brings us to a year later. They cashed in on the success with Godzilla Raids Again. And I honestly, this one gets picked on a lot. I don't find it offensive, even though a lot of it is just leftover footage from the previous one. If anything, I just think it's a complimentary. It's more built for like a double feature that you play after the end of the movie, and you still want some extra juicy bits. And in this case, you know, you get Japan, you know, is out for blood, so they're doing a manhunt by aerial raids, and so it's definitely worth a watch, if not, you know, superior to the original. So I'd give it a 3.5 out of 5. Daniel.
Only real noteworthy contribution was introducing Anguirus. Otherwise, it's just a clone of the first film.
No, that's true. Yeah, and this is also known as Gigantus the Fire Monster.
Yeah, that's the American title. I mean, this is the first kaiju movie to ever feature a kaiju on kaiju battle. So I think it sets that template that the rest of the series follows. It was like, oh, we can have Godzilla fight somebody, and we can have a rotating cast of monsters for him to fight. Anguirus is the first one, but is a great one. And Anguirus is one of my favorites. And this is the only Godzilla movie to be directed by Modi Yoshioda. Yeah, the Honda didn't get to do this one. He was off working on Half Human at this time. But I mean, yeah, it's obviously, it really lives in the shadow of the first one. It is also black and white. The Japanese version is better than the English, but still, I'd give it 3 out of 5.
Yeah, that's the one I saw. I haven't even seen the often talked about, you know, American version of the original Godzilla. I just can't. I like Raymond Burr, but
I like Godzilla King of the Monsters. I grew up on it because you couldn't really get access to the Japanese version on VHS.
Well, and that's the excuse, is just
Right.
for the longest time, Americans were all, anti outer country influence, so they would deny any access to certain movies. Sometimes you would only have access to even third or fourth versions of certain movies that, were the TV versions, that were like mixtures of all the cuts. And
but
so,
if you compare King of the Monsters to like the English version of Varan the Unbelievable or Half Human, the English King of the Monsters respects the hell out of Gojira. It actually keeps intact almost the entire story. They just replaced one Japanese reporter character with Raymond Burr as a reporter. I mean, they brought in a lot of the same actors to reshoot the scenes. So it's got a lot of respect for the original film, especially compared to a lot of other dubs.
Right. Or or like later Gamera where it's all just stock footage and that's the movie and it's like, I didn't pay to see all 5 movies edited together. Damn it.
Yeah, we got to remember there was no home video at that point. So
right. They fooled us once. We didn't have IMDb, so we could pull up and realize, oh, I have already seen that movie. I'm just paid to see it again. So lo and behold, they go, almost half a decade more, and Godzilla gets to fight the American-created King Kong. And this is known for having, different versions depending on region that it appeared in. It's distributed by Universal and currently Criterion Collection. So I give this a solid 4 out of 5. I don't find it as inspired story-wise, but I do like how each monster has their moment in the sun with a like it or hate it ending, but the music is very epic and while not suspenseful, it's still just the romp pays off with the characters not being annoying if not memorable and just staging each scene up for the next fight. To me, this is basically Way of the Dragon, Bruce Lee taking on Chuck Norris. This is just that's how I'm gonna describe it. But Daniel, I'll let you tackle.
Well, I'll describe it as that scene where Kong and Godzilla come into the big field there and they're facing off, and I just look at that today and I think it's like, King Kong being like, "Da hell," and Godzilla being like, "Da hell."
All right. And
I mean, this is the movie that like establishes Godzilla as a big star on the level of Kong. It's a popular myth that there's 2 versions of the film, but there really aren't. They basically have the same ending. There really aren't. I've seen both the English and the Japanese, and they have the same ending. There's a couple extra earthquake shots in the American one, but it's the same ending. They both fight and fall into the ocean, and Kong swims away. So you're supposed to interpret that as Kong victoriously swimming away, or he's swimming away in defeat. It's up to you whether you're a Godzilla or you're a Kong fan. But the music does differ. I know you mentioned the music. If you can watch the Japanese version, the score is actually done by Akira Fukubi. So he actually did an original score for this film. It
sounded kind of like the guy who did the classic Mission Impossible theme. So I don't know if I was watching the American or Japanese.
I mean, if you were watching the American one, it'd be a bunch of the Universal stock music, which would be like you'd hear from Creature of the Black Lagoon. Yeah, that's almost certainly the Universal English cut. Were they speaking English the whole time? I mean, that's how you'd know. Were they speaking English?
Mine was a Spanish dub, so even more confusing.
That is confusing. I guess I hope that you listen to the Akira Fukubi one, but I love this one. I'll give it a 4.5 out of 5. I really like this one.
Okay, perfect. And I don't even know why anyone even is being pissy about it, since it's not like Godzilla dies, or explicitly shown. Yeah, for all we know, it was equivalent of Wayne Brady on Chappelle's show. He just choked a bitch. It's just down for the count.
Yeah. It's kind of like Batman versus Superman. I mean, no one could win.
Damn. Okay, so with Mothra versus Godzilla, we got the first, Mothra is a moth that has his own successful, if not as popular, arguably franchise, Killer Moth, who stops all these other bizarre aliens. Woo, Mothra.
Mothra doesn't stop aliens. Mothra stops greedy humans.
Correct.
Yeah, but I recall him finding a few monsters or squids, but I mean, not that it was memorable. Yeah, for the most part, he's almost always like the antagonist or the guy who just gets in Godzilla's way.
Mothra is definitely never the antagonist. Even in the original Mothra, she comes out to defend the fairies against the rich businessman antagonist. So Mothra is always a figure of good, and is always a hero for sure.
Yeah.
Nature's revenge.
Yeah.
Well, so there you go. And Godzilla's kind of interfering or stepping on nature's turf. So yeah, this kind of makes it a bigger gray area, especially depending on whether you think Godzilla's a hero or a villain. So, yeah, here they're fighting against each other, and this is a weird one. I think it's a lot of fun, but I didn't find the story all that deep, except in some occasional visual imagery. I'm sure a film historian might disagree, and it might be a different take on it, but this was a fun romp, and it's definitely 3.5 or 4 out of 5. It's just one of those a solid. This is where Godzilla starts becoming just a fun escapade, saying, "Hey, he's going to keep fighting a monster from this point on. It's not just going to be,
But here he's still antagonistic.
Yes.
He is antagonistic.
He's villainous. He's
But
almost
what's
at his
weird-
evilest.
What's weird is they spend more time on him than the hero to some extent, I think. So it's just like, it is kind of weird how, Mothra doesn't get as much development yet, is presented in kind of a cute manner. So that's just all they need to just tell you, hey, root for him. And yet the poster, makes it look like he's antagonizing Godzilla. So it's like, okay.
I mean, this was just further into Godzilla's evolution. He eventually became a good guy, but here he's still the villain. And I can't say I like that suit very much in this one. Particularly
It's all right.
particularly
got
the fact that
controversial
this one he
opinions
comes
there.
out of the ground. He's not in the ocean. That was kind of a departure.
All right, so if I may briefly respond to this. So the reason he's in the ground is because in the prior film, King Kong vs. Godzilla, when he fell in the ocean, he was swallowed by the earthquake. That's the reason they stopped battling, is Godzilla was swallowed into the ground by the earthquake. You don't see it on camera, but that would be why he comes out of the ground in this one, rather than out of the ocean.
Okay, so
also,
just to clarify, they weren't doing reshoots and they didn't have to change the costume, ladies and gents. Just saying.
Yep.
Yeah. I didn't think about that. I just remembered that chaotic and
yeah, and Moso Goji, which is what the suit is called in this movie, is like one of the most popular designs, and it's definitely one of my favorites because he's got the brows furrowed down, and he just looks mean and evil. So yeah, I love the design of this Godzilla, and it's basically, I mean, I think it's highly accepted as one of the best films in the franchise because it's such a perfect blend of the original Gojira film and the original Mothra film really kind of coming together, even down to the score, right? I mean, Akira Fukubi basically blended Mothra's theme with Godzilla's theme into this just amazing score that goes throughout the movie. And it's an allegory of what happens when man meddles with nature and the consequences of when nature meddles back, like a corrective action on nature's part. And yeah, Mothra is
stuff that goes over the average American's head because it is amazing how people either go, I like it, or find the blockbusters too dumb, but they don't. Whenever there's imagery, they just don't look for it, and it's like, but it's there. It's clearly, not. This is still deeper than you care to think,
Yeah, and it's not accidental. I mean, this is absolutely a film that talks about, again, still the consequences of nuclear proliferation, but also the consequences of pollution, and basically how we're treating Mother Earth, and that Mother Earth has an avenger in the form of Mothra who will whoop our ass if she needs to.
Mothra, the visuals almost after a while just look like pollen that they're spreading. He's the crop.
Yeah, it's like a poisonous pollen.
Right, he's a crop duster at times.
And this movie is Mothra versus Godzilla too. So Mothra gets top billing. She is the hero of this movie. Godzilla's the co-star.
Right.
Mothra's really the star.
and a typhoon is what starts this battle. So thanks, nature.
Yep. Exactly.
So definitely classic. A very good first.
5 out
appearance.
of 5 for me. 5 out of 5.
Okay, awesome.
It
Yeah.
is a good one.
All right, and so next we go into Ghidorah, the three-headed monster.
Oh, baby.
Alrighty. I don't find this as strong a get-together, but the fire effects are wonderful. The locations are really eye-catching, especially for, that's just part of where I go with these movies. Just have the, you can still have the cities and, forests, have very inspired art direction as opposed to be closed off sets. I feel like the screen time's a little uneven, like sometimes more, Ghidorah's the main guy in this, and Godzilla kind of gets a little more screen time than the title monster, and yet Rodan kind of comes in here, and I feel like it keeps it both at the same time is more interesting because it's a freeway battle, and at the same time, it's also when Godzilla's featuring more action with Mothra and Rodan, that kind of is distracting for the title monster, but at the same time, the title monster does get some epic attacks and whooping battles, as well as, again, his theme really sets the whole thing apart. That is really neat. And yeah. So there you go, John Cena, you hack! You stole this thing. Yeah, there you go. So yeah, it's a 3.5 out of 5 for me, and it's a good movie. Don't get me wrong. It's just one of those. Is like I don't think this is even the title monster's best moments, but don't get me wrong. It's still a great. This is where you start seeing them stage action and multiple segues, and you got to hand it to these creators. They're doing it still in a way, as opposed to now everyone just does the Star Wars tactic where we have to have 3 battles going all on at once. And today's blockbusters, fuck us up because they always have just confusing edits and, nothing to distinguish it other than people shouting, in a close up against a green screen, space background, here, where they're going to go next when the battle is done here. They're going to go on, lick their wounds, and go on to the next battle here. So I call this a blueprint, for lack of a better word. Daniel, weigh in.
This really is the start of, you might call it the Zilla-verse, where all the monsters truly do coexist. I mean, yeah, we had Kong, yeah, we had Mothra, but here you got the real battle royal. And it does introduce us to Ghidorah, who is easily, he is the Joker to Godzilla's Batman.
Yeah, very true. Rob?
Yeah, this is definitely it's the first appearance of Ghidorah, which should give it some big points. But I agree with you. It's really slow paced. I've tried to show this to friends, and they are bored most of the time waiting to get to Ghidorah. And it really leans heavily on this sort of sci-fi Martian angle, which isn't all that interesting. But I would say in the film's defense, it's probably because the actual kaiju choreography was so complex and expensive that they couldn't afford to do all that much at that point. This really marks the first time Godzilla steps into the role of hero, and he's convinced to do that by Mothra. Mothra convinces Godzilla and Rodan.
Godzilla, what terrible language!
Exactly. Yeah. You get to hear the monsters kind of talk to each other. The fairies translate for them. But it is really slow paced, and you don't get that much monster fighting. So I do like it, but I'll probably give this one like a 2.5.
All right. Yeah. No.
Ghidorah does a lot of better stuff later.
Well, and that is a good point, because I mean, it is amazing how some people is like they'll watch plenty of other movies that take their sweet ass time, getting anywhere, and yet with these they're way harder on just because I don't know. There's somehow a 30-year dilemma is like even with James Bond is like somehow people can get into those no problem and not notice that each of those movies are almost 3 hours, and with these is like you say, is like some people depending on their mood, it's like, oh, it's taking so long, and it's like seriously, I mean, there's something going on. It's just, so let's head on to Invasion of Astro Monster.
Yeah.
Which I'll just say this: I feel like this is kind of the director's cut of the previous movie because again, Ghidorah and Rodan, fighting and just no Mothra cameo. And again, I just good scenery, music, change of pace. I rated this slightly higher. And
Hashtag Godzilla dance.
Yeah.
this is definitely the main creator of the movie. So yeah, it's a 4 out of 5. It's interesting seeing a mixture of American actors with Japanese actors. You got Nick Adams here.
Nick Adams. Yeah, he did a few of their movies for them.
Yeah, and it's just so wild, just seeing that influence, and just partnership. And so there's a bit of loose commentary kind of on where society is at this stage of it. This was made from 65.
Base
This is
rate
where-
person front and center.
Yeah. So I guess you could say Godzilla goes historical, but this is definitely where I think this would definitely be in a party pack if you had to get a bunch of Godzilla movies in a randomly packaged, Mill Creek collection. I'm sure this one would be in there.
And it usually is.
Oh, it is? Okay, well, perfect.
Yeah.
Well, glad to have that confirmed. Danny boy.
I mean, yeah, this was when they started to actually get pretty silly with it. The Godzilla dance, obviously, but
No, I'm just kidding.
and where he's still tag teaming with Rodan. But this was also the official, real introduction of the Martians well, not Martians, but the space aliens trying to control the monsters, and that really set it in stone for the rest of this. So this was kind of the beginning of the downfall, I think.
Fair enough. Yeah, it's
I would state they're not Martians; they are Exilians because they come from Planet X. This is, I think, one of the more popular entries in the series too. And yeah, you get the return of King Ghidorah, but instead of that kind of dull background that the previous movie had, which is kind of about a princess assassination who's lost her memory and thinks she's a Martian, you get basically a retread. They did do this plot previously in a Toho movie called The Mysterians that was also directed by
that's
Honda.
right.
So it is basically the plot of the Mysterians, except that now the aliens, instead of having a giant robot, they have, Ghidorah and eventually Godzilla and Rodan under their control. But I'd say it's a better plot than what they were just working with the last one. And you get Godzilla and Rodan, they fight Ghidorah in space. So what more could you ask for? For me, this one's a 5 out of 5.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point because
great sci-fi effects all the way.
Well, there's that, and for the longest time, I didn't have access to the movies, but I knew everything just because there was an official when Wiccas were becoming a thing. There was, but it wasn't even the official Wicca. There was various other websites that would tackle what locations are seen, what's the kill count in each Godzilla movie. So GeoCities was becoming a thing. What other just weekend commentary and other stuff was in there. And so, yeah, I always knew, it's there's these Martians and there's these other guys who just happen to be just astronauts or other people from another planet. So this is definitely, compared to some of the other ones where some of the stuff like that just comes out.
Around here, look at our crazy helmets.
Crazy helmets. There's definitely.
This is also where the series starts becoming more popular with kids, too, right? And so you would call them silly maybe, but they're also getting more simple and more sci-fi based because that's what kids would like, and kids are starting to become their largest demographic.
Yeah, but I mean, even the Planet Xers, I mean, all the other stuff that you see with aliens and other third individuals that are kind of daring the monsters to fight, some of these other movies kind of go downhill in the plots because the stories just kind of come out from just nowhere. There's nothing to really, it's just confusing and bizarre. And this one, it makes simple sense, and you're just and you accept the universe extension. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to just being I don't know why this alien is making them all fight. I don't know why. These guys are astronauts. You do understand. It's they're all doing research and everything. It's their job titles and all that. And like you say, it is becoming just more just family fare, but everybody is getting something out of it as opposed to, oh, that's too cute after such an age. So I'll just lead us into number 7. Ibara, Horror of the Deep, also known as Mystery Science Theater's Godzilla versus the Sea Monster.
Did someone say shrimp? I love shrimp. Shrimp scampi, shrimp cocktail, shrimp a la king, barbecue shrimp, fried shrimp.
Oh my god. This is definitely oh my fucking god. This is kind of like the Smog Monster, where you either love it or you really hate it. I kind of find this so bad it's good. There's a lot of trashy establishing of everybody, yet and the story is extremely barely existent, but the evil scientists are kind of fun, especially the destruction of the factory near the end.
Boats spraying pee.
Oh my god. Yeah, and people almost drowning in this. If the island doesn't consume them, if the Ibara, the sea monster, doesn't, if the goofy looking American posters, what looks like green Godzilla, having foam fire come out of his mouth to go against the giant crab, then the water engulfs them. If not that, then it pretty much follows a typical Tarzan or Creature from the Black Lagoon kind of story. It's like you got all these other humans trying to kill each other and make off with some. I don't even remember what they were making off with. It wasn't even any necessarily kind of a profit. And kind of in Gamera mode, what are the two sisters called that are kind of talking to Ibara? They're kind of introduced very bizarrely, in my opinion, but yeah, it's a 3 out of 5 for me. It's just a fun romp. I'm sure everyone else has more details on this, but that's all I got for this silly romp. Oh no, my bad. I was getting it mixed up with some other monster movie. Yeah, no, that's just Mothra's two overseers that I'm thinking of. Yeah,
the two twin fairies that are in. They're Mothras. They're the Shobijin.
My bad. But yeah, if you haven't seen that one,
this does further the relationship with Mothra.
It does, but I find if you hadn't seen that one, they're very confusingly kind of introduced, in my opinion.
Yeah,
and they're not played by the Peanuts either, as the original Shobijin are. They have 2 new actresses.
They do a cute dance, but then that also feels like it's from an entirely different movie. So I'll let you guys weigh in. Go ahead.
You could say this is the start of environmentalism being stuck into Godzilla, which was kind of an awkward fit. Well, I mean, it
can work in the right movie, but I know what you mean. Where it's like, these guys are just poised. They don't even have the proper like fail safes in their factory. Like every button they're pretty much pressing is just making something go off. It's Dr. Forrester telling us to get out of here so we can watch a shitty movie. No.
Don't ask me why, but I just love the fact that Godzilla is like the main monster star of this, but yet when he confronts Mothra at the end, Mothra literally just like, bang, smash him aside.
He pretty much gets made by everyone's bitch. He gets scarred real bad by the sea monster.
Giant shrimp.
All these people you don't care about, they get slaughtered by the dozens to where you're like, I should feel sorry for someone here. Oh. But why? I just know the minute they get in the boat, they're going to get drowned. And yet, some of them, I kid you not, some of these guys have the best WTF faces. Oh, it's that kind of face that's like, it's the mix of a O face and a it's just a whoa face. That's all I got. Rob.
You caught yourself in the zipper face.
Oh, my
Well, every film up till now, besides Godzilla Raids Again, has been directed by Ishiro Honda. But this is the first film that's not. It's directed by Jun Fukuda, who's a bit more action-based and kind of does more of the kid-friendly stuff. Another reason I think this movie...
Too. And Rodan.
Who?
Fukuda. He's also known for doing Samurai 1 and 2 and Rodan.
Rodan is Honda. Oh, you mean Rodan? Like Ronin? Like the samurai?
Roadan.
No, Rodan is Honda.
Okay, well, it's saying he did that, so...
The internet is wrong. This is definitely Ishiro Honda who does Rodan.
Internet would never lie.
It's,
yeah, no,
dude, I'm reading it right in front of me.
definitely doesn't though. And now this script also was originally meant to star King Kong. And so that explains a lot of the more bizarre elements, like why Godzilla fights jet planes.
Oh, he was an assistant director. My bad. Sorry.
Yeah. Fukuda may have been an assistant director on Rodan, but yeah, no, it's
That's
Honda
what-
that directs it. And so that's why Godzilla fights like jet planes, and like giant animal inhabitants of the island, and it's like why he picks up Kumi Mizuno in his hand, even though who wouldn't want to? And it's why he gets revived by lightning. You know, they stick the sword in so Godzilla will get struck by lightning because King Kong was in this universe is rejuvenated by lightning.
That's very true. There are kind of just a lot of just kind of smaller moments. You're not going to get in the whole thing, but if you're looking at the big, so that's kind of where I just feel like this is where Godzilla starts becoming, in some degrees, kind of just testosterone hour, and it just wipes you out before you've even to the second hour, just because it's just so fucking long. But like you say, it's like there's always these little gotcha moments, and that if you compress each scene standalone, if you were able to YouTube separate moments, you're gonna definitely get moments like that. Wait, I think I just saw something there. So,
for me, I would give this one a 3 out of 5. I do think
definitely
it's
worth seeing.
a pretty entertaining kids entry.
Right, but it's definitely it's got childish logic. But like you say, if you're not coming here for any kind of logic, you're coming here just kind of for a fun romp. And I mean, it's what Godzilla's supposed to be. But like you say, do you prefer the mindless ones or the flawed ones, or do you like the ones that are pretty diverse and very well rounded? So it's definitely where the franchise keeps rising to new challenges. So, and then here we go, Son of Godzilla, which I gotta say, pretty violent for a kids movie. Especially, I mean, they fight Godzilla and Son just flat out tag team and just murder a dude, and I gotta say, it's pretty gory and.
Well, the dude is a giant spider.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking of another monster that they kind of just are stepping on repeatedly, and it's making a noise where it's like, jeez, that's pretty brutal. So yeah, he fights Manila, Kumonga, and Kamakuras. Yeah,
Manila is his son. Minya is his son.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Kumonga is who I'm thinking of. Yeah.
Kumonga's the spider.
Okay.
And
well,
Kamakuras is the mantis.
Okay. No, I'm thinking of something else then. My bad. No, I'm thinking of the next one. Okay. Okay. So yeah, no, this one pretty good. Yeah, Son of Godzilla just introduces you to the goofy, called Minya, like you say in American versions. I know some people consider him the Jar Jar Binks of the franchise. Not so much. I think he's a fun.
No, that's Godzuki.
Okay, that's who I'm thinking of.
Hey, do not badmouth Godzuki in my presence. He was voiced by the guy who does Scooby Doo.
Oh, not Frank Welker. Casey Kasem?
It might be Welker. I can't remember if it was Welker who was doing it back then.
Okay, yeah. Oh, gee, who voiced Scooby Doo?
Oh god, we're getting sidetracked here.
It's real fast. Don Messick. Okay, but yeah, no, Frank Welker also did it. Okay. Yeah. So. Yeah, this is a 4 out of 5. This is definitely one of the best appearances of the character, and he appears for just a bit, and I think it's a fun father and son bonding, even though it may not arguably be deep. It's still a worthy contribution, and yeah, it's a 4 out of 5 for me. I'll let you guys go. Daniel.
Well, to start with, one of my most vivid television memories of my boyhood was laughing like a crazy fool at a commercial about it takes a man to be a father where they were playing clips of Godzilla and Minya. You know, everybody, let me tell you about my best friend.
Wow.
But yeah, this I have mixed feelings in this one because it was kind of nice to see the big guy being more nurturing, being a daddy figure, but this was really a huge step down in his descent into just being kid-friendly fodder.
Jeez. Yeah. It does have its kiddish moments at times where it's like, okay, you're a little too cute, but
You know, that last scene of him holding his son while they get ready to go hibernate, that's good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I like Son of Godzilla. It's another Jun Fukuda one, and all the insect monsters are really interesting, especially Kumonga, who's just one of the best effects in the series. I think, you know, it moves around like you could really believe it was some kind of giant spider.
Right.
So yeah, I think it's a great one. It's got freaky moments because the spider itself is freaky. So I'll give this one 4 out of 5.
Okay, yeah, sure. Yeah, no, and so very much this is where you start seeing the movies kind of repeat the earlier success, and that's definitely the case even with the upcoming Destroy All Monsters. It's literally same deal, except more monsters and, you know, Godzilla standing his turf. In this case, you know, Manila, or as I call, you know, Son of Godzilla, just is kind of just
Oh boy.
being defended by him this go around, and it's a all-star monster bash. And yeah, and it's just moments of it that I think are just too intense, even no matter what kind of kids. It's like, geez, that's brutal. I know it's gonna be brutal, but it is just one of those like, a little too violent for my taste for the tone. But music and effects, it's definitely inspirational in terms of Foley, and just you feel a little bit emotionally invested. It's like, okay, I want to see him defend this island from all the other guys that are intruding upon it. So it changes the whole retrospects and makes you just show that, hey, it doesn't have to be Godzilla being in a city where he either is welcome or isn't, you know?
This one just, it's such a step down in the previous films. Like, it was the big descent here. And by the way, that costume, you could tell it was starting to feel the wear and tear. You could see parts falling off.
Yeah. I don't know how many suits they use per movie, so I'm sure some historian has some.
They use them over and over.
No. There's nearly a new suit made every movie, and for Destroy All Monsters there was a new suit made. It is falling apart a little in a few movies from now, Godzilla vs. Gigan, where they did reuse it, but by Destroy All Monsters, it's a new suit from Son of Godzilla.
Maybe the stuntman ripped it. I don't know. It's a good question. Yeah.
I mean, you know, for me, this is Ashiro Honda returns, and he brings everybody with him. I think this was kind of their attempt to finally kill off the series. I know that the producer Tanaka kind of thought they were out of ideas.
Yeah, that's the best way to say it. They were just dry at this point.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is basically the same plot as the Mysterians and Astro Monster, where aliens have come down to control our monsters to take over Earth. The only difference is that you get
a few more. That'll make it better. No, it didn't.
Yeah, well, in this case, you get 11 monsters in the big final rumble. But besides the big final rumble, I mean, this one is another really fairly slow-paced movie. It's very rooted in sci-fi. I think there's a really long instance where they fire a laser to like melt this thing, and I think they're firing it for it's probably a 3 or 4 minute segment. So the saving grace really is just that big climactic battle. But it does have the return of King Ghidorah, which is pretty great. But I do believe, they do stomp Ghidorah's neck pretty hard in this one. But Ghidorah
the one I was thinking of. Yeah,
is a total dick at the end of the day. He's like a planet killer, so he kind of deserved it. And I believe this is also the last film of the Showa series that got released in theaters.
Oh damn, yeah. So that would make sense because the other ones is like they stopped being an American, drive-ins, and just the only time we saw it was when it was like the NBC movie of the week,
Well, it may have been released in American theaters, but I mean in Japan, basically every movie here for the rest of the Showa era is released as part of the Champions Festival, which is like a children's movie festival. So the kids would just go to the theater. It was kind of a closed off special event, and Toho would produce new movies for them to watch. It would show them some Ultraman episodes. So you could send your kid to the theater and they would be gone for, 4 or 5 hours out of the house.
But
watching.
they weren't even a straight to video series. They were always, like you say, just like only kind of an exclusive.
Well, it was the 70s, so I don't think there was video in that way. But it wasn't released.
I just mean as it goes on, like the 80s and 90s.
Most of that stuff, we'll get there, but I'm pretty sure Return of Godzilla almost certainly made it into theaters. Probably Biollante did. Probably most of the Heisey series did.
Okay.
But of the Showa series, the rest of the Showa series is part of the Champions Fest. So it's all these rest of the movies we're talking about now. They're not meant really for adults. They were literally created with an audience of nothing but children in mind, who just want to see monsters. And so they would take older movies like King Kong versus Godzilla, and they would chop out a lot of the human talking and just show them a shortened version of it with so they got to the monster fights quicker.
Money shots.
Yeah, basically the money shot. So that's where this era is starting to go. With these next movies, is they're going to be lower budget. They're going to be very, very kid friendly.
Very true. Okay, so next up is All Monsters Attack. I know this is without even having looked prior to even the IMDb reference. I did not enjoy this romp at all. I liked again Godzilla and Junior, as I call him, bonding, but they even used some brief stock footage from like the previous fights. Oh no, look what I did. Oh, father's going to save me. It's just that kind of stuff. And the kid who has this whole connection and seeing the whole universe could not be more annoying. He's more annoying than, a kid in a lesser Gamera movie. I'm sorry. I
like comparison. Honestly, it's not a bad comparison.
I like Ichiro, poor kid.
It's all good. I'm Team Timmy. I want Timmy. So this is one of those. I don't know. This is where it feels like they're having less inspired ideas, and
if you don't cash grab, use stock footage for cash grab.
I mean, cash grab again. It was released in the Champions Festival, so it's basically to satisfy kids. So to me, that's the stock footage is probably it's not stock footage. It's just they reuse fights from Son of Godzilla and Godzilla versus the Sea Monster. Basically, probably to save money, to get more monster fights to save money. But you do get some new original monster fights. You get Gabara. Gabara.
I don't even remember if he kills him or not.
I'm sorry. I look at Gabara and I just think, you know what? Don't laugh at him. Acne can be quite painful and embarrassing.
But yeah, I can. As a kid, I enjoyed this movie.
It's even called Godzilla's Revenge, which is weird. I'm like,
Godzilla's that's the American dub is it's called Godzilla's Revenge. But it's
not even about revenge.
No, it's really not. But yeah, it's a kids movie. It's absolutely a kids movie. If this is not a one I would recommend for an adult to come into.
No.
But for a kid, where I didn't mind watching him fight the sea monster again. I didn't mind watching him fight Kamanga again. I was down for it, and I actually really like the story of Ichi befriending Minya and kind of learning life stories that he needed to learn through the lens of Minya and Godzilla's relationship together, because Ichi has relationship problems with his father and mother, which was common in Japan at the time, where both parents might be working and kids might be home alone. So I think it has some merit. It is one of Honda's last films. This is his last film before he goes on hiatus and returns in a few years. Yeah, it's absolutely a kids movie, but it's a great movie to watch with kids, though.
All right. Yeah, I mean, you're gonna watch them all anyway, so we're not saying you shouldn't watch any of these, but Yeah, this is definitely one of those, depending on, how big a nostalgia or a first timer, what are you going to want to even give it a moment of your time? No, all well said, guys. So let's move on to Godzilla versus Hedorah. This is in
baby.
71, and once again, he's, a pollution monster, smog monster, and yeah, we were talking about this before we began. I don't find as much of memorable about this, plot wise, but it is. The kids are interesting for once. The poisonous gas is furthering damage from this monster, and it's definitely well shot. It is definitely the one one of the many you'll remember just for how the fights are staged and how creepy the monster looks, and just, those glowing red eyes, yeah, overall, I think it's worthwhile, if not necessarily memorable, but technically very expertly well made, and it's a 3.5 out of 5 for me. So, Daniel, you take it away.
First and foremost, acid trip of a movie.
Yes.
I actually like Hedorah as an enemy to Godzilla. He's very unique, and really just the way he keeps changing shape and form and has so many powers is fun. But just the animated sequences, the whole nightclub part with the skeletons and the fish faces, just you wonder, what were they smoking?
And this is before Biollante.
It was on acid. He was on acid for sure.
And it's also got a certain charm and that effect that was a point where environmentalism was just starting to come into the forefront.
For sure. Yeah, it's something wacky. Rob.
This one is definitely, in my opinion, not a kids movie. There's some real dark stuff in this. Hedorah flies.
Skeletons.
Yeah. People, Hedorah will fly over a group of people and they'll be reduced to skeletons. And it's some dark shit there. But again, it was the movie I literally grew up with. I was probably 3 or 4 watching this movie.
Godzilla gets blinded in one of his eyes, just like the various victims. Jeez.
Godzilla gets blinded. So I gotta say, this is probably still maybe my favorite one. Can't say it's the best one, but it's my favorite one. It's another allegory about the dangers of pollution. Of course, it's not vague at all, right? Because it's for a child's audience.
It's in our face.
Exactly.
And we're not talking Mothra level, where it's like, hey,
Yeah, no, there's no subtlety to this at all. This is the only film directed by Yoshimitsu Banno, who was then bannoed from ever doing another one.
Yeah, the producers were pretty much choking each other, not liking how the director had done it, and
yeah, they didn't like it. And he kind of got the last laugh because he went on to produce the 2014 Legendary Godzilla, so he actually helped bring it to the States to Legendary. And also the score was done by Richiro Manabe, who makes the very risky choice to include the mouth harp. Which I think deserves a bit of credit. So This is weird. It's an acid trip of a movie. It's pretty dark. Okay. It's gory, but you get lots of action in the end. And so I'm giving this a 4.5 out of 5.
Yeah, no, very cool.
And just as a note on the end, Hedorah, I think, is one of the first cases, probably since Kong, where we get a Godzilla enemy who displays almost like an emotion, because there is that scene where he's burying Godzilla in sludge, and he actually laughs.
Yeah, he laughs. And then he explodes like the Predator.
Right. Oh, so there you go. They might have been inspired by this decade.
It was before the Predator.
That's what I mean, inspired. Yeah.
Oh, that would be great if they were inspired by him.
I mean, we're just going on this, but I know just about every monster person, makeup effects guy, that's all they spent, was just after school, just watching movies on TV, especially, monster movies. I'm sure they had to see it or be inspired without even realizing it, just because they've seen them 100 times on TV. So here we go. Let's make a run for it to dun, 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 dun. We are followed by Godzilla versus Gigan.
No.
Alrighty. So Gigan, pretty instantly recognizable, especially if you played any of the video games of Godzilla.
hmm
I don't find him the most frightening or even. He's kind of a goober, He's just one of those. He's like a part cyborg, part reptile.
He needed development.
But it's kind of fun. I think of him as the odd job. I'm going back to James Bond. He's just, you remember him just because of how he's designed and how he's trying to kill him versus actually being effective or deadly. It's cool seeing King Ghidorah again, and Glorious is an interesting choice. I think it's fun filler, if not groundbreaking, but it is, again, going back to the previous success of just having, again, multi-battles. It's interesting seeing the aliens control it from inside a theme park. So
Inside of a Godzilla-shaped tower. And
Right.
Anguirus was almost certainly used so they could reuse the shot from Destroy All Monsters where King Ghidorah picks him up.
I
And
did
flies
notice
for a
that
bit and drops
at
him.
times it looked like it
And
had,
suddenly it becomes sunny, right? They're fighting at night through most of the movie, and then when they reuse shots from Destroy All Monsters and they reuse shots from Ghidorah, the three-headed monster, it's suddenly sunny.
continuity. What continuity?
And correct me if I'm wrong on this one. A little bit of a difference between the U.S. and Japanese cuts. In the Japanese ones, the monsters have voice bubbles.
What?
Yeah. I think that it's
Yeah.
kind of like a comic book layover, and
Yeah.
they,
Oh, okay.
When the monsters talk, like, "Hey Godzilla, hey, you better go check on something." They've
Yeah.
got voice bubbles.
which, well, I kind of like that because one of the characters is a comic book illustrator, so that would sort of work. I think compared to where in the English one they use like slowed down tape, right? To hey, Anger, something funny going on. You better check.
Oh, God.
So stylistically, I think Japan made the better choice of those two.
I can't
I
remember
would
what
say
I saw.
though,
I definitely don't. This is weird. I don't recall dubbing, and I sure as hell don't recall comic book illustration. Jeez, what version did I watch?
I don't know. It's
There-
kind of
there's
where
gotta be
Godzilla
subtitles. So,
Godzilla sends Anguirus off to go check on the mainland. But I like the design of Gigan. I think Gigan is actually one of the more popular monsters in the franchise. Even though he doesn't have a ton of personality, he's a cyborg. He's kind of just a Terminator. He just likes hurting people and he likes hurting things. He also laughs a few times in this movie.
He's another one.
He likes trashing. Well, it makes sense because the guy who played Gigan is also the guy who played Hedorah. They're the same guy.
okay.
So it's the same suit actor in there. So they both kind of do those same laughing motions. They both do a lot of stuff with their arms. It's really noticeable. But
There's no acting involved in this. No.
there's tons of physical acting involved for sure in this
Sun
movie.
acting. Let's call it that.
Suit acting. It's suit acting, and and he's one of the good ones. But this is definitely it's another kids one. It's another sci-fi aliens trying to take over the world. So it's not an inspired plot.
No,
But-
they're getting formulaic, but like you say, it's
The fight
great
in the
as
end's dope. The fight in the end's dope.
Yeah.
And so I'll give it a 3.5 stars. You're basically just waiting to get to the fight, but you get a good solid like half-hour fight. So
Right. There's slow moments, but you're not bored, and at the same time, you don't remember anything else really about it other than, like you say, just it's like, hey, I think I've seen that fight before. Hey, this is a new fight. It's pretty cool, but like you say, there's
and you
And-
get the Godzilla song in the end. They sing a song about Godzilla at the end. Yeah, so Godzilla's kind of starting to borrow from the Ultraman universe.
he might
at
as
that
well have
point.
been a live action show at that point. I mean, he's the gunslinger. The man
Yeah,
with-
well, he does. In about a year or two, he cameos on Zone Fighter, which is Toho's kind of answer to Ultraman, and Godzilla makes some cameos in a few episodes, as does Ghidorah and Gigan.
Nice.
Hunt down Zone Fighter if you can. Interesting
Uh,
show.
I'll try.
And on the note of Gigan, I feel it's worth noting, in my opinion, if Legendary is going to continue, Gigan, I say, is the choice as the next villain. He's the best follow-up to what they did with Ghidorah. But it's just hilarious to me that for what an auspicious start this movie was with that character, like you can tell that poor guy could barely move in that thing. But in more modern tellings, they improved him so much, and Gigan is probably the best Godzilla villain of recent times.
Yeah, Gigan is definitely great, and it's funny because his suit is even bulkier in the next film. So he's
You know,
Oh,
a
that's
little
all
slimmer.
he's supposed to be.
That's,
He's a muscle.
Side,
Yeah.
side rant. You know, we've had Godzilla as the Guardian. We've had Godzilla as the king against the would-be challenger. So, my opinion, if they do Legendary next, Godzilla versus the Psycho. You know, the monster who comes to Earth. He's not out to conquer. He just wants blood.
It's Grand Theft Auto Godzilla edition. Yeah.
Well, you know, Kong versus Godzilla is the next one. They're gonna be
Yeah, I
looking
know.
for some villain for the two to team up against. And to me, logically, Ghidorah would be the one, but they already
But they've done
screwed
him.
that up. They shot that load too soon.
Either guy
Um,
can destroy it.
we'll get there. Don't worry.
I will get ahead of myself. All right, next one is Megalon.
Megalon, the second Godzilla
Oh,
movie featured on
baby.
Mystery Science Theater. So all I'm going to say with this one, and I'm not going to give it any more moment of my time. It's Megalon is a pretty cool monster, and of course the Jet Jaguar song, and yeah, I got nothing else. 2 out of 5, and that's being courteous.
That is quite generous, actually.
Oh, I thought everyone else was gonna nerd all over and say it's a 4. What are you talking about, motherfucker? All right.
It is so stupid, but it's the fun kind of stupid.
I mean, it definitely is a cheeky
Lying
kind
the
of,
pig!
and I don't know what the hell the main plot's about. It's spies and assassins trying to get like all this information from like this corporation. It has nothing to do with the rest of the movie.
Well, the
And,
plot
and
of this one is sort of a retelling of a previous Toho movie called Atragon, where like the undersea civilization of, they call it Mu in Atragon. Now it's Seatopia. Basically are annoyed by the surface dwellers and therefore send a monster forth to destroy them.
And talk about James Bond. One of my favorite moments in this that is just so deliciously corny is the whole literal Seatopian spy. Well, I'm going to explain to you our whole plot because there's no way that could work against me.
Right. Let's give it all away, so then you're wondering what the hell you could possibly come up with for the remaining 90 minutes.
I'll just lock you in this death trap but not before I explain to you how it works and introduce you to my gorgeous secretary.
Right. And yeah, isn't she also evil as well? And there's all this other shit. And the kids are, everyone seems to know martial arts, including the kids. So it's just like, okay. It's like, I guess went to some kind of karate academy school.
This movie actually skirted a lot of censorship in retrospect because
Really?
there's
think
a
so?
scene when the kid and the one scientist are kidnapped in a freight truck. There are several shots of the freight truck drivers talking to each other. They've got a topless Japanese centerfold pasted to the back of their truck, behind their heads.
I've never seen that. It's
Yep,
definitely
I have seen that. Probably, you know, since these movies were designed to be shown in a theater, not on home video, it's, you know, it's a lot of like why the effects are sometimes not as strong because it's like, they're gonna watch it once. No one's watching that closely. You know, that's the kind of thing. Now this is,
It was a total feeling of, yeah, no one's going to notice.
yeah, this is really the low point of the budget stuff.
Oh, God.
Megalon is a cool design, right? He's a giant cockroach who burrows underground with his drill hands, and he
Right.
spits out napalm grenades.
So
and
many
he gets to-
powers, but he's so stupid.
Oh,
Well,
that's
yeah, he is
so
stupid. He
Trumpy, you
hops
can do
around.
stupid things. Yeah, it's
and he's weird. You get Gigan back, who put on a little bit of weight, but he's still Gigan, so he's pretty cool. And they get to reuse some shots from the last movie. And you get everybody's favorite Ultraman ripoff, Jet Jaguar,
yeah.
who was actually designed by a child. So before we're too mean
Yeah,
to
that
Jet
was an art
Jaguar, he was
concept.
designed by a child as part of a contest from Toho. And then they went
Wow.
changed the kid's design, and the kid was very upset. Yeah, this movie was originally intended to be a solo film for Jet Jaguar, and they figured he couldn't carry it by himself, and they put in Godzilla.
Wow. Because
So
yeah, Godzilla gets no development at all, and they're just going on the whole marketing. It's like, oh, that
Yeah.
comes first. Story, don't need it. No, just
it is.
have
It's
something get
basically
you
a
into
90-minute Ultraman episode. You know,
Wow.
that's pretty much
So,
what it is.
so in an average Ultraman episode, there's a bunch of assassins and kids. Is that
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yes.
wow. Okay? So, what would make sense in a crime procedural or a goofy kids show? Huh? Let's get her. So on to Godzilla versus Mecha Godzilla. Alrighty, this 5 out of 5. Excellent score. Awesome Bruce Lee type fight scenes. Just it's just epic. Watch it. All right, that's all I got. You guys go.
Correct me if I'm. Was this the cockroach aliens or was that Gigan?
That's Gigan. This
Okay,
is
this
the ape aliens
This
Okay,
has
and
from the black hole.
and he does a tag team with the lion bear like creature King Caesar.
Yeah, King Caesar. King Caesar, underrated kaiju for the amount of abuse he absorbed. He should be like Anguirus.
Hey,
Fan
I
favorite.
want him on my tag team.
Caesar is pretty popular, I think. But I mean, one of his best powers is like if he catches a laser beam in his eyes, he reflects it back, and it's like, how often are you really gonna catch those in your eyes, dude? Like, what are the odds? But anyway, Mecha Godzilla. What more needs to be said? Mecha fucking Godzilla. It's a classic. It'll
Awesome.
probably surprise some folk that the robotic clone angle had already been done 7 years prior in King Kong Escapes,
Oh,
Another-
King Kong.
another Toho movie which features Mechanicong as the prime rival who fights King Kong. But
So very influential on all the other monster genres. There's got to be a robot or alien duplicate of you.
yeah, it definitely did really. I don't know what they were necessarily following from that one. But yeah, I like this one. The music is great, especially the King Caesar song, the song you have to sing to wake him up. I could listen to that
That's
for
great.
hours.
Yeah, they did do that a little long, but it is such an epic song, and the way it awakens him is so great.
Yeah, and it's a crossover too. She's some Japanese pop star they were trying to promote.
Here we go with the final of the Showa era. 75's Terror of Mechagodzilla.
Ooh,
The
baby.
first one wasn't good, so let's go with Mechagodzilla 2.0 and have Titanosaurus hang out in the fight. So this one, it's a 3 out of 5 for me. Your mileage is going to vary. It doesn't measure up to, the last Mechagodzilla in my opinion, but it does have it's just another fun romp, but I don't remember anything really else about it other than, oh, they're cool. They're bringing Mechagodzilla back, but too bad it's not as notable. But I'll let you guys weigh in my opinion.
It's not as good as the original, but it's still damn good. And I actually love Titanosaurus. He's so over the top.
Oh yeah, no, he's cool and all.
Why?
I just didn't really find as much.
That scene of Titanosaurus rampaging while Mechagodzilla flies in, and it's obviously a cardboard cutout. I love it.
I like Titanosaurus. He knows how to lay in a good uppercut. But yeah, I mean, after this was a 4-film break for Ishiro Honda, and then this is the movie he comes back for, the last movie of the series, of the Showa series. You also have Fukubi returning to score, and you got Akihiko Harada coming back to play that sinister Dr. Mifune. So all the elements are here.
Yeah, I
but
forget. What does he do again in this? He is just.
He's the one who
Daring them.
implants his daughter. Well, his daughter nearly dies, and the aliens, once again, aliens from the black hole, similar to last movie, save his daughter by turning her into kind of a Darth Vader half robot woman, which they then enhance later again, make her more robotic, so she's almost all robot, and put Mechagodzilla's controller inside her. And that's basically what they're doing there. But yeah, so all the elements to me are here, but it just kind of lives in the shadow of the first Mechagodzilla because there's really no new or interesting ground explored.
Yeah.
It's just sort of a well-made remake.
Well, that's just it. I just recall it being watchable and fun, but not deep or just as memorable.
The
other
only
than
big deal is that
Titanosaurus.
Honda comes back. I mean, that was the only big deal about this movie, really. Is Honda's back, you get Mechagodzilla again. But I mean, it's a cool little film.
Right. All right. Very cool. So let's get into it. Heisei. Is that how I say it?
Heisei.
Heisei. We got 84 to 95. So second decade of Godzilla. How do we feel about how he looks in this era? It's darker, grayer. All right. Yeah, he's green in some ones and gray in others, but
The first film, I think, may have my least favorite suit. I think later is, I think it's Heisei. So, but as the Heisei suits go on, I think he gets mean. Like, I definitely like the Biollante suit a lot more. Like Godzilla in this first one, Return of Godzilla, it looks like he needs a nap. He's got bloodshot eyes. It looks like he's tired.
Droopy, but it was the whole film was a refreshing throwback to me.
for sure.
We'll return after these messages.
Hey, feeling down? Feeling low? Not enough podcasts about movies in your life? Why not try
They must be destroyed on sight.
the new Podcast Cure-All? Sure to get you right with the world and on a path to better living. We have exploitation, we have Italian horror, we have zombies, we have slashers, we have crime films, we have spaghetti westerns, we even have sci-fi and sex comedies. So take a dose of
They must be destroyed on sight.
as needed, and let the hosts, Lee Russell, Daniel Harper, Paul Romali, and the odd guest host cure what ails you.
Warning, may cause atrophy, African consumption, black fever, bone shave, chin cough, colic, cramp colic, dropsy of the brain, elephantitis, grocer's itch, jaundice, mania, miasma, mortification, palsy, Pott's disease, rheumatism, scurvy, St. Anthony's fire, summer complaint, and worm fit in some people. Consult a physician before listening.
Hey, I heard you like movies.
I heard you like to hustle.
I heard you like podcasts.
Well, guess what?
There's a podcast for you out there called The Home Video Hustle.
Damn right.
Every Friday, we talk about whatever movie PJ picks out the bag. What does that mean? Every Wednesday on our YouTube page, I put a bunch of movies in a bag, and PJ picks one out at random. And then we just watch it. We talk about it for maybe like an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever we feel like doing, wherever the conversation leads us.
But do we actually talk about the movie?
Most of the time. Tangents galore.
Yes.
So believe me, we may be a movie podcast, but it's not always about movies. We may talk about video games,
Music.
Yeah, that's the big one, music. Sometimes we might get a little bit of politicalness in there.
Yes.
Sometimes we may just, we know what we like to do. We like to tell stories, PJ.
Yes.
I am the master storyteller
Yes.
of the podcast realm. Undefeated. So if you like to hear about movies, video games, whatever foolishness comes to our mind, the most random stuff you could think of, check out the Home Video Hustle. You can find us on the Stitchers,
Yes.
the Google Play,
Yes.
Apple Podcasts,
What else?
Podbean,
What else?
Podcast Addict,
Goddamn.
all that. Ain't no reason you can't get your hustle on. We everywhere, worldwide, baby.
Hustle, motherfucking hustle.
Hey, we can't cuss in the promo, PJ. We
Ah.
gotta be family friendly. There may be podcasts out there that don't want his hair say
Ah. Ah.
all
Yeah.
that good fun stuff.
Well, you.
Yeah. don't run the listeners away, PJ.
I'm sorry.
But this is going kind of long.
Yes.
So we'll end this and say, hey, check out the Home Video Hustle every Friday on all the various podcast outlets. Peace.
Peace.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster. And while Witch didn't make it to the top of the world, he did make the Gangs of Hollywood podcast. So join the gang and enjoy a movie review podcast about movie gangs, gangsters, mobsters, and the mayhem they cause. You can find GOH Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at GOH Pod at www.gohpod.com. gohpod.com, as well as your favorite podcast listening app. And remember, say hello to your little friend for me.
If you take two old punk rockers who are past their prime, put them in front of a movie screen, and give them a podcast, what do you get? Cinema Punks. Cinepunks. It's the mixtape of movies.
Did you ever see a film at such a young age it left you traumatized with cinematic wounds? Necrophilia. It's a dead issue, man. Don't push it. Cinema Psyops is a weekly podcast documenting an ongoing experiment on the mind of an unwilling test subject.
No one should have to watch this movie.
Oh, no one should have to watch this?
No one should have to watch this movie.
Surprisingly, it's not a topic that a lot of people really want to tackle.
I'm shocked, prudes.
I know, really.
Right?
It's the next sexual frontier that no one wants to explore.
I am, in the most sincerest of senses, disappointed in you.
It takes a powerful goddess like Connie, jam her arm down the monster's throat and kill it. Oh, I'm still tripping out over that. Even as a kid, I was like, I gotta find a girl like that. Every week, I get a new look of disappointment that I never thought I could get out of it.
Unimaginable. At 12 years old, you should not be watching this movie.
Obviously.
At 13, you should not be. 14, you shouldn't be. I'm not entirely sure even 17-year-olds should be watching this.
Just because you're offended by something doesn't mean that you have the right to demand that it doesn't exist. Watching this film again, I had all of this like little nerd glee with everything that kept
little
popping
history all popping up
absolutely.
at you.
So I totally loved this film.
Hey, I know why you couldn't see that. It's because your brain's warped from watching this shit at 12 years old.
Yeah, this is a rough movie. I told you ahead of time when we were getting ready to do it that it was
How
going to be a
did you
rough
watch
one.
this shit at 12?
Because physical wounds heal, cinematic ones don't. Listen to Cinema Psyops.
Hey everybody, I'm Corey.
And I'm Zach, and we're the hosts of Podcasting After Dark, a cast dedicated to late-night horror and sci-fi of the 80s and 90s, often found on HBO and Cinemax.
You know, the movies your parents didn't want you watching as a kid. You can find us every other week on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, and Stitcher.
This is what you want.
This is what you get.
It's time, let's check our cue, baby. Pair it with a couple brews, baby. We love good movies. We love the bad ones too. So we watch them all and pass their lessons on to you. Oh yeah. Everything I learned from movies helps to make life a little bit groovy. Whether one last plot holes or gratuitous movies, it's time to get busy with your friend Steve and Izzy at eilfm.podbean.com.
Welcome to Who Was She podcast. I am your host, Tara Jabari. After a decade working in documentaries, marketing, and all things digital media, I found that podcasting is a strong medium to share stories. After years of producing for others, I decided to start my own biographical podcast. Who Was She will focus on the life of a woman throughout Baha'i history. The first season is about Lydia Zemenoff. Lydia's story explores the subjects of the power of language and faith. Her father invented the universal language Esperanto, and she came from a Jewish family and became a Baha'i. She grew up during World War I and was killed during World War II in a concentration camp, despite heroic efforts to save her life. How can one person's life intersect with so many others, connect across borders, and inspire a biography which inspired this podcast? Over the next few weeks, I will share her story with you and the lives that were most affected by her and those who affected her life as well. They include her father, Ludwig Semenoff, her spiritual mother, American journalist Martha Root, and the Baha'i German soldier Fritz Mako, who worked for the resistance undercover while having to serve the Nazi Party. I want to thank the author Wendy Heller and George Ronald Publishing for their blessing to let me use Heller's biography, Lydia, The Life of Lydia Semenoff, Daughter of Esperanto, as a main and instrumental resource for this podcast. So please subscribe and learn about this amazing woman who traveled through 3 continents in an effort to bring unity through the power of language. You can also find more information on our Instagram, Facebook, and Pinterest at Who Was She Podcast. Music was composed and performed by Sam Red. I am your host, Tara Jabari. Join us next time as we begin our journey about Lydia Semenoff.
Hi, everybody. It's Mac Jackson. I wanted to invite you to a new site called the Forever Adventure Network. This website has everything: pictures, videos, blogs. There's original music by Harmony Constant, 2 podcasts. One is the MacGyver podcast, where we celebrate Richard Dean Anderson, his iconic roles, and how it's influenced our lives. There's episode discussions, interviews, and life conversations. The second podcast is the Never Gets Old podcast, where we celebrate all the best things that we love in life, from TV, movies, music, and comics. The site is also the home for the MacGyver SG-1 audio series, an ongoing adventure series that continues the adventures of MacGyver and SG-1. There are also multiple stores to choose from for all of your pop culture and adventure needs. Come on by and check us out today. And thanks for joining the adventure.
Are you sick of the same old stale podcasts? Well, then join Vanessa and Darren as they dissect movies of all kinds. The 2 lifelong cinema lovers bring their favorites, curiosities, and first-time watches to the operating table and inject them with a healthy dose of snark. Then there's the waiting room, where they examine books and short stories. So just look for them on Apple Podcasts and where fine podcasts are available. They're part of the Legion Podcast Network. Follow them on Twitter at VDClinicPod. Join them on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/VDClinicPod. Or email them at vdclinicpod@gmail.com. They're ready to cure what ails you. And still, they just might be a little contagious.
We now continue with our program.
Godzilla vs. Biollante, the second acid trip of the series. This used to be distributed by either Miramax or HBO Home Video, and it's, 85 is a weird year, but this makes a great double feature with Star Trek: The Final Frontier. I'll just say that. So 3 out of 5.
I can see that.
Yeah, this one drops in 89, but
yeah,
there's a few hiatus after return.
It doesn't have much of a plot, but the monster is cool, and it definitely is the kind of movie that probably makes sense if you're high if you watch it. So
Oh yeah.
But it's visually well done, and at the same time, you're not going to really know much of what goes on in it. It is an oddity. It's a cult movie. So, if Cheech and Chong directed.
I think it suffers from too much plot, actually. I think there's so much going on.
Yeah, that's why I don't remember any, but I just zoned out.
There's the genetic engineering subplot of actually creating Biollante, like mixing Godzilla cells with plants. There's a huge ESP subplot with a woman who's trying to control Godzilla through ESP. And then there's one of the angles where a foreign country, I believe they're called Seradia, are threatening to release Godzilla from the volcano that he fell in. He fell in Mount Mihara in the end of Return of Godzilla, right? So he was trapped there, and they are threatening to release him with a time bomb, which they do eventually. So there is a whole lot of plot. There is not enough monster, but then when you get the monster, Biollante is probably just one of the best designed monsters. I think it was also a fan creation, yeah, and again, it serves as another allegory for man tampering with nature, but this time in the vein of genetic engineering. And to me, this is the peak visual skills of any Godzilla movie. I don't think any Godzilla movie looks as good as Godzilla versus Biollante. Like, especially like there's this whole sequence where he's actually rampaging through the city, and like the sky is totally red. And
it is a very well shot movie. At times, it feels like they're shooting it underwater with the puppets. You know, it's just that kind of atmospheric of a movie. So, I mean, like to say, I do recall it going on for fucking decades.
It is a real long movie,
but I don't recall. I don't regret it. That was the weird part. Usually, when you're bored at an older movie and it's not dating as well, it's like this one's like, hey, it is well shot. It's just an escapade, so just take it in and just let it rip.
Yeah. It's one of my favorites of the Heisei series, so I think some other people probably agree with that too. But yeah, I love this one. I don't know if I'll go 5 out of 5 because it's so long and talky. Like, you have to really be in the mood to strap in to watch Biollante. But I'll give it a 4 out of 5.
Right. Okay, so here we go. It's where Godzilla just keeps being experimental throughout this whole phase until the 90s roll around. So we are followed with the first 90s era one, and in this entry, it's again Godzilla versus King Ghidorah, and cashing in on the whole Back to the Future craze of time travel. Although I don't think it was necessarily direct. It doesn't directly follow that, so no transfers type tropes, but it is one of those. The plot's still kind of one note, but the battles deliver. I just consider this kind of more just kind of junk food fun. It's not a must see because there's already countless other King Ghidorah face-offs, but I don't regret a single minute of it. It was just kind of one of those. It's like it's not the first one that just jumps out at you. It's like, oh yeah, you totally got to see that one. So 3.5 out of 5. It was a fun popcorn outing, but it wasn't a must see. Top 10. But
it at least got Ghidorah back into the modern age.
Right. And then there's the Mecha King Ghidorah. So there's a lot of Godzillasaurus, which is kind of a weird add-on of that.
I think that's the stuff that makes this movie, to me, it is a must-see. And it's all because they go back in time. You get to go back into the World War II, into the Pacific, see the dinosaur Godzilla was before he was mutated, and how he saved the heroic Japanese soldiers from the evil Americans, who led by Commander Spielberg, to remind you. So the time travel stuff is so bizarre, but that's so important in the Godzilla verse. So rarely do you get to see those momentous moments, that to get to see Godzilla before he was Godzilla, that's so important. And then there is, sort of a subplot of, a warning against time travel, a small cautionary tale. They try to change the past. They try to move Godzilla so he doesn't become Godzilla. And what do? They move him to another spot where I think a sub crashes and he gets exposed to more radiation and he becomes bigger. So, the small cautionary tale there. Ghidorah looks beautiful. This is probably also the best rendering of Ghidorah. He looks way better than he does.
He does look good. There's some
even
weird,
in King of the Monsters, he looks better in this than he does in King of the Monsters.
Some of the other monsters kind of look a little odd, but maybe that's just me. I don't know.
Well, I mean, in this one, it's him, Ghidorah, and Mecha King Ghidorah. I mean, besides the door rats, the little door rats.
That's what I'm thinking of. Yeah,
they're adorable, but they're a small, cheap little quick prop. I mean, but they're adorable. I love some door rats. I would buy a little door rat plush. That'd be great. But yeah, I like this one. 4 out of 5 for me.
Just very experimental, and don't get me wrong.
Very experimental.
The plot was pretty cool to just see them taking a risk, but it is one of those.
I mean, yeah. I mean, we've been talking about how they have no new ideas this whole series, and here we are. We have a new idea, and we're going to poo-poo it for being experimental. I won't. Kudos to them.
No. I thought it was fun. I just didn't really remember much about the time travel and all the other stuff. So maybe I'm due for a rewatch. But
And there's an android too, right? He's like a Terminator android. He can run super fast, kind of a la Alien, that kind of style of android. So
yeah. I mean, we'd already had Jet Jaguar. So yeah, at this point, I mean, you got all these other monsters that are kind of throwbacks to other types of tropes and similar stuff. But yeah, I mean, the smoke in each laser blast also looks very beautiful.
yeah,
Very well lit. My way. So and then the second '90s entry, Godzilla versus Mothra. This is one of the first ones that when I'd seen like not many movies, and this was one of the many I first started watching. It was free to watch on Crackle, and I gave it a go. It was either Crackle or Hulu, can't remember, and I just gave it a go, and it's like, hey, pretty passable time killer. It has the other creature called Batra. I just recall there being a lot of cool military action in this one, and I liked how they were detailed without being over talky. I can't remember a single character, but it was a cool time killer. It was, again, when Godzilla is just becoming it's reminding you of spectacle. Again, the new design just looks beautiful and very well shot, good Foley, and again, just establishing shots. I recall one submarine getting really fucking bombarded in this one that was really kind of cool to see in a Godzilla movie. I don't know if anyone else remembers, but
yeah. I think doesn't Batra mess it up?
yeah, it's like just a giant, just pretty much just diminishes this giant cruise ship.
Yeah, Batra larva messes stuff up. I know a lot of people claim this to be one of the best entries in the Heisei series. I love
get you in
Mothra.
the mood, yeah.
I mean, I definitely love Mothra, and this is again probably the most gorgeous rendering of Mothra. When I really think of Mothra, I think of the Heisei Mothra. She's beautiful. But yeah, you get Batra, who's like the dark Mothra, so you get the avenging side of nature. But this is one where I think the plot is also a bit of a snoozer on this one.
Yeah, you won't remember anything about the main thing other than that. Hey, they're fighting at least.
Yeah, so I'll give this one a 3.5 out of 5. I just think that the plot itself, trying to like track down Mothra and here's Batra, is just a little dull. But the fighting is sweet.
Yeah, for sure. Alrighty, Daniel, I guess you haven't seen this one. Or...
No, I have, not all the way through, but I do gotta say, I like that final battle where, what were they again, the two fairies, the twins there?
Well, they were the Shobojin, I think, in the Showa series, but now they're called the Cosmos in the Heisei series.
When they do the one song where Batra, like, revives Mothra, or was it vice versa?
Batra gives its life to revive Mothra, I believe.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Godzilla versus Mecha Godzilla 2. For other international markets, they just call it again, versus Mecha Godzilla, but it's part 2, and it's in 93, and this was where it was always so confusing. This was one of the ones that would often be in like the multi-packs. It would show it constantly on channels like Stars and HBO, and it was confusing because, it was just at every single video store, and it was always poorly ranked in every TV guide I read, and I was like, how is that possible? This is a kick-ass, each fight is well staged, the music's very not electronic, but kind of synthesized a bit, and it's just you have again Super Mecha Godzilla as well as Rodan and Fire Rodan, and Baby Godzilla shows up, but for the first time. But everyone's got their take on what they like and don't like. This is a 4.5 out of 5 for me. This is a must see out of any fan, just because they're just firing on all cylinders. But I'll let you guys weigh in.
This really was bringing Godzilla in the modern era. They tried it in the 80s, but this was the great leap forward.
And they haven't touched the character in a while, Mecha Godzilla.
And a really good redesign for him, by the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, his eyes are glowing at times too. It's like you expect the unexpected with him, especially. Right?
Yeah, I think the new design of Mechagodzilla, it's very sleek, but I can't say this would be my go-to entry of the Heisei series. It's probably my bottom of the list of this era. The plot's sort of strange. I mean, they're basically making, in all the past films, they've had the Super X, right? Like, which is the humans trying to combat against Godzilla. And I think they had the Super X2, and they might even have the Super X3. And now they've got another plane called the Garuda, which they also build Mechagodzilla, and so it's basically the big counterattack. So I mean, that's the interesting thing, is that Mechagodzilla's not made by aliens; he's made by humans to combat Godzilla, who's been the antagonist throughout this whole series.
Oh, that's overall it. They're just, again, they're trying to go from each battle to the next, but at this point, it's like Godzilla's kind of just a deathmatch ring. Just ding, ding, ding.
And it does introduce Baby Godzilla, who is not as cute as Baby Yoda. But the movie has some great effects. But I think the story is just kind of forgettable. If I'm trying to describe what the story is, it's humans build Mechagodzilla to fight Godzilla, and it's like, yeah, the fights are great and the effects are great, but there's not a lot of plot there. I would have liked something more experimental.
I guess because they just gave us all these just nonstop battles, I just didn't have a chance to even think about the plot. I had so much fun just kind of seeing Godzilla go through all these waves of guys. And I don't know, and because just the title villain just had so much persona, and that's saying a lot for a character that doesn't speak. It's just being such a badass. He's just kind of, at this point, Mechagodzilla 2, is just kind of just showing this guy kind of be the equivalent of, again, the best of the James Bond villains. He's kind of the Darth Maul, where he's just totally owning, and yet you just want to see how the title character is going to actually defeat him. So, but I see what you mean. I don't recall much of a plot. I just recall it just being in the first bit, just a setup, and then you have all the rest of it. But I'm just never bored by it. Just compared to some of the other movies that come out, but yeah, that's all I got for it. So next up, another fan favorite, Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla from '94. We got other monsters like Maguire, the Fairy Mothra, which is a different design, and Little Godzilla. But Godzilla in space. This makes for an interesting challenge because it's like they use some of his like DNA or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
cells brought into space by Biollante.
Some of the cells are supposed to be carried by Biollante or Mothra, seemingly.
Yeah, the plot, maybe the setup's kind of just very weird, but again, it's just another one. It's just All-Star Showdown. I don't know if I would put it near the top, but it's definitely a must-see. 4 out of 5 for me. I like how they're being, again, just more unpredictable, if not remarkable to all audiences, and definitely a memorable space villain who would be cool to see him return. Probably an underrated one because I don't see as many people talking about him as much. I recall a lot of people saying they like the movie, but I don't recall him getting as much fanfare. I don't even recall him being a playable character in any of the video games. So,
I think he's definitely there in Melee.
Oh, he is? Okay. I probably didn't unlock him.
I mean, this is a film I enjoy more and more each time I see it. I actually didn't care for it much as a kid. Maybe it's because, a lot of the Heisei series has been kind of nostalgia based. And this is the first one, besides Biollante, where they really introduced like a whole new monster. And it's like, it's Godzilla with big crystals on the shoulder. Like,
yeah, the
maybe kind of lazy design. But it's cool because he kidnaps little Godzilla. You know, baby Godzilla is now grown up to be little Godzilla, who actually might be cuter than Baby Yoda. And so that's what's cool is like Space Godzilla is super cruel, and you do get the return of Morgara.
Bad guy.
And you get the return of Morgara, who was in the Mysterians. He's the robot the aliens first used to try to take over the planet. So you do kind of get some nostalgia bringing him back. Yeah, it's one I've grown up more and more, but like, yeah, for me, some of the like the non-stop action ones are not always the most interesting.
Oh, good. I mean, this is just one of those that just gets to the fights and it has an interesting setup. So you're just like, yeah.
It's definitely fight heavy. If you're just looking for a lot of great effects and a lot of fights, then this and the last one are definitely for you.
It's definitely not boring. That's what I'm getting at. You know, it's just like, because there are ones where it's like they drag and by act 3 you're just wiped out, and it's not even because there's too much testosterone. And this one is like you really don't have a moment to breathe, but you don't feel like it's repetitive either. It's just like, damn, okay, this is one. And you know, Space Godzilla, that sounds cheesy, but I think the monster has a lot of intimidation. Moving on, here we go. Godzilla versus Destroyer. Alrighty, so definitely just again a bunch of mutated creatures forcing Japan's self-defense forces to devise a plan to get rid of both. And this is the last of the 90s Japan-made movies, and
the last of the Heisei series,
Yeah.
And yeah, those creatures are mutated from the Oxygen Destroyer, which killed Godzilla in 1954. So it's a real callback to that original film.
And to Hedorah.
Mm-hmm.
As he goes
Yeah, the way that he evolves through his different forms and shapes, absolutely.
Damn.
You know, and what's important and what's significant about this movie is that Godzilla's nuclear heart is melting down, so he's going to die. You know, finally his basically nuclear status as a radioactive creature has come back to haunt him, and he's going to die. But when he melts down, he's going to take all of life on Earth with him. So the humans have to find some way to try to counteract his
contain
melting
the
down.
nuclear, yeah.
Yeah, so that's really where most of the action of this is. Destroyer's a cool villain, but to me, kind of fades in the background too. The main story being Godzilla's melting down and how to prevent that. So I like this movie, largely based on that. I mean, the monster design certainly is cool.
The monster is well designed, but doesn't really have any persona. But like you say, it's just not. It's again cool seeing just a nonstop versus match with, reasonable Japanese military guys who you don't feel are idiots like the average ones who just seem to just bombard. But again,
keep shooting. Eventually it'll work.
Right, or just have generic dialogue. I think we should destroy him. Heart thing definitely gives it a little extra credibility. So let us move on to Zilla.
That's not the title. Come on.
Godzilla. I know. 98. Wrong. None other than the people who brought you Universal Soldier and Independence Day, Roland Emmerich and Dean Devlin, also known as one of the best Riff Tracks live events. This is not what I would call a good movie, but it is an amusing, trashy movie. Again, it only makes sense on our Saturday morning cartoon level, and this is one poorly written cartoon. Despite having a bunch of French spies led by Jean Reno of Leon the Professional, despite having a bunch of loser characters, despite having Ferris Bueller be very confused as to what he's supposed to be doing, and a lot of Jurassic Park knockoff moments at the end. I've seen it multiple times on TV. I don't think it's a good movie, but I do think it's amusing and fun. Just depending on the mood. I've seen people violently hate it. I've seen other people listed as guilty pleasure. I just say, okay, it's junky. The script, but at the same time, as a trash fest, just go ahead and seek it out. Don't claim it. You don't have to claim it as Godzilla, especially with how we go later on where they claim it's a separate character. But, I mean, I don't even recommend it as a Godzilla movie. I just recommend it as a goofy monster outing. That's all I can say. Great soundtrack. Very good soundtrack that you would never even know is even, part of Godzilla, but that's
Brain
a must.
Stew, Rage Against the Machine.
Yeah, just even other stuff by people who never went on to do anything else, but
like David Bowie.
Well, no, I'm talking
like Jimmy Page.
I love them, but I'm just saying there's some other stuff in here. Yeah, all good. So I'll let you rate it. If is it so bad it's good 3 out of 5, or is it something else?
I hate Broderick.
All right. Not a fan of Ferris Bueller, but all right. I love Ferris Bueller, but I will say his character is just very bizarre in this. I don't think he's hardly what I would call the main issue, though. I think all the other stuff is just, again, they did all this model work, then they decided let's put all this shoddy CGI over it. It's still a watchable movie, and all the other actors are giving them their all, but none of their motivations make much of any sense.
Yeah, I mean, this movie, everybody loves to hate it. I can't defend the design of Godzilla herself, I suppose. And I can't
well,
defend.
it was asexually, right? So yeah.
Yeah. Well, but yeah, and I can't defend, the Jurassic Park derivative ending. But the cast includes many members of the Simpsons cast.
That's
and
also.
I appreciate that. Plus, if it wasn't for this movie. If it wasn't for this movie failing, then we wouldn't have gotten the animated Godzilla series that they had in the 90s.
Right.
So
a lot of people liked.
Yeah, I like it. So at least some people, some good came from this.
Even had Michael Lerner reprise his role of the Roger Ebert looking mayor.
And
he is amusing in this.
Great,
like he just
great
doesn't...
Taco Bell campaign too.
Oh my God, Yo Bueno Taco Bell.
Gonna need a bigger box.
Oh God. Yeah, everyone has to quote Jaws. We're gonna need a bigger box. Oh.
That's what the little Chihuahua said.
Right. So what's your rating? I guess you'd give it a 2, 3, or...
Oh, I'd give it a 1.5. But if they send me some tacos, a 2.
Oh, good. It's a pretty stupid movie that is just worth watching for fans of.
It is stupid, but it really falls apart in the third act. There's things I like in the middle of it, like Godzilla really trying to run and hide is interesting because you haven't really seen it. Then it's like less that Godzilla's a force and more that
it's like
a loose animal.
Roland Emmerich, where he just has very shoddy music playing at inappropriate times. It's like shit. How are you wasting a David Arnold? This is the guy who scores all those James Bond movies. Why are you having this? Let's be honest. Why? Then all the other scenes where it's like Broderick trying to get back the reporter gal who cares nothing about him, but just her career, and yet feels attached to him. And just that also is like, I'm convinced Roland Emmerich himself is a Godzilla alien who's never met an actual human. It's like
and he studies worms,
right? Oh, okay, so let us bring us back to form. Godzilla Millennium Era, not Millennium Films. I'm talking Millennium Era. 99 to 04. Now, a lot of these, this is where he starts, most of these are only released on home video for the most part, except for this first entry, and the rest, obviously they're all theatrical in Japan, but I'm just saying statewide, we don't see them except at Blockbuster shelves.
I saw Godzilla 2000 in theaters.
Oh, did you? And so,
I was the only one there. Oh, at that time, it must have been about 13 then.
Yeah, it was definitely the first one I saw. It helped that it was just constantly, on Cartoon Network, just advertised, as well as in certain, other Sony movies. They would just play it before the feature began. So, it's a big deal, making a big comeback.
Yeah, and they're trying to kind of salvage their property after the 98 film, because they knew how it kind of damaged the reputation of the series. So
for sure,
that's what it gets rebooted. This is now the Millennium series, and every movie in this era acts as a direct sequel to the 54 Godzilla film, and ignores all others, including others in this series.
Yeah, I didn't think about that, but they really do. It's like he's got just all this crystallized kind of white scales on his back.
Yeah.
Very detailed gray and pitch black, skin. So I'm going to be in the minority. I know this is a very, very extremely popular one that a lot swear by. I have tried rewatching it. It is just one of those. I don't mind it being Godzilla just being suspenseful and all, but just the main plot and characters I do not find intriguing at all. Even the main bad guy who has the goofiest laugh. I do find Godzilla going underwater and letting the creature who's a weird, it's called Orga or something.
Orga.
Yeah. Let the creature eat him and then destroy it from the inside. It is amusing in the credits, and it's been omitted from the DVD and other future copies since. I guess basically the only way you can find it now is if you see the first run Sony VHS tape of it where they do a total James Bond, Godzilla will return.
I have that VHS. So.
Oh, perfect. So, yeah, this one, it just doesn't do it for me. It's not the worst movie of all time, but I'm always disappointed each attempt viewing. So it's a 2 out of 5 for me, but I'll let you guys weigh in if it's one of the best ones or underrated ones.
I love the redesign of him.
Yeah, it's cool, but
otherwise forgettable.
For me, this is one of my favorites, actually, because I think you get kind of the beginning of the movie, you kind of get the humans against Godzilla. It kind of seems like it's going to be doing the Return of Godzilla thing, where we're going to be rebooting it. So in this case, it's kind of almost Twister-like, right, where the Godzilla experts are chasing Godzilla.
They are acting like that, and so I guess that's what I didn't like, because it's like stuff I didn't like about American disaster movies. They're just following him, acting all just idiotic. I mean, you look at the 90s Gamera movies, those characters were pretty mature for the most part. It was like this one, they're kind of going on that same trend, like Revenge of Iris, where it's like they're witnessing it, and each of them serves as exposition. That's fine, considering this kind of movie, but yeah. What's your take on the main villain and the Orca monster?
Oh, I love the Orga monster.
But I mean, also like there's all these other evil.
But there's the human villain, right? Who's really trying to
fight.
Well, I think he's trying to foil them gaining any information about Godzilla anyway. Mainly because I think
he just watches them and he's like,
they don't like the guy, and he doesn't like Godzilla either. But I mean, the Orga monster's real cool. They're like trying to study how Godzilla has his regenerative powers because he's kind of like Wolverine. He heals at a super high rate. So yeah, it's just one that I've always liked more and more every time I watch it. So I think it's one of my more favorite Millennium movies. So yeah, I definitely enjoy it.
It's often rated as the most campiest one because they just redid so much of the dialogue for the American release.
I'm not surprised by that. I mean, sometimes dubbing is hard, so
having too much fun. So, on to the actual one released in 2000, Godzilla vs. Megaguirus, and also known as the one where a monster gets grot
and body slammed.
And yes, body slammed. It's a wrestling match, guys.
Yeah, kind of.
It's an interesting mix of model work and CGI bodies, but it doesn't look shoddy like some other ones that we've seen. And I think it's a fun romp. It's one of those that's never rated, but it's definitely an R, like would definitely be rated R. Just for those brief over the top moments. But yeah, I saw this on Chiller when they were doing brief Godzilla marathons. I think it's a lot of fun. And again, it's not one you're going to remember for its plot, but I do recall how, the nuclear power plant is defended, and there's a bunch of shock waves coming out of the whole thing, and just almost a futuristic looking city design. That's pretty cool.
It is futuristic, and I believe it's not a nuclear plant because like nuclear power has all been banned. I believe in this film.
Oh, that's right. Plasma energy is banned.
Yeah, they use plasma energy anyway, so that hopefully won't attract Godzilla to ever come back.
Right.
So basically, Japan has cut over because they've been devastated by Godzilla so many times. I mean, the monster Megaguirus. Yeah, I mean, Megaguirus is cool. He's like a giant dragonfly. But to me, the real star of the movie is the plot. It's the scientist's plan to forever eradicate Godzilla by shooting a giant black hole at him. And it's a good idea. And most of the film's tension is carried, to me, on the back of that. Of, are they going to be able to finish this technology? And then are they going to be able to hit Godzilla and get him out of here? Because he's, even though he's fighting Megaguirus, he's still kind of a bad guy.
Oh, my bad. My bad. I just realized which one I just got mixed up with. I'll more on that later. Okay, yeah, no. I do recall there being a lot of cool military people and all that. I just didn't recall the black hole and all the other stuff. But it's definitely one of the best looking ones of the 2000 era. And Daniel, you have any other thoughts on it?
Well, I mean, it is nice to parse where they're kind of getting back to, okay, we got to get rid of Godzilla. He's no longer the defender of the Earth. He's kind of a menace. But this one just feels like treading water between what would come.
Oh, good. I mean,
and the 2000 and what would come soon enough.
So that's just it. I mean, I recall it being visually well shot. You brought up the black hole. Obviously, that's a big key plot point. That's pretty intriguing and all. I think it gets drowned out by the awesome battles, but that's just it. You just remember the battles over the cool plot. And don't get me wrong, the characters aren't annoying or anything or one-dimensional, but it is one of those, is like they're kind of just filling in the blanks between the next, epic showdown. So this leads us into Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah, Giant Monsters All Out Attack from 2001. Baragon's in here as well. So yeah, and just trying to keep the franchise alive and well.
Crazy long title.
Yeah.
So
also known in the
GMK.
US as just Monsters
GMK.
All Out Attack, but GMK. Yeah. So there's some. Oh god, the kids in this are very extremely annoying, but it's also got a giant body count. So, where do you draw the line? It's definitely a forgettable one, but it's one you're going to want to see just for kind of just the chaos in it. But this is where I feel like they're just kind of appealing too much to Americans who just want, mindless blockbusters. And it's like, when they can do better, it just kind of annoys the shit out of you. And there's at least like 3 different like moments where it's like 20 minutes of nothing going on. And then you have just, once you're past the cheesy, kids, getting in the middle of things. I think one of them even almost gets rescued at the last minute by one of the creatures. And the Ghidorah fights really aren't all that inspired. The CGI kind of looks like a Sci-Fi Channel movie, but it's not to the point where you're like, it takes you all out of it, because the whole movie you can't take seriously at all, so you just kind of accept the fantasy element of it all. But I just don't find this a high point, but I do think it's worth watching. It's reasonably entertaining as long as you just don't expect anything from it. And you're a Godzilla completist, you're going to want to watch it anyway. But I just can't. I'm glad they brought Ghidorah back, but that's really just all I can really think about. So you guys can tell me if it's, more than a 3 out of 5, or is it, one of the best ones?
Nice redesign of Baragon, at least.
Yeah, he was kind of cool. It was very CGI, and he was probably the most detailed of the creatures. And he wasn't even on the screen that long. But
I mean, yeah, I probably look for different things in this, because to me, this is one of the best entries of the Millennium series. I mean, you got Mothra, King Ghidorah, and Baragon, who actually, so
Gets killed
strangely
by
enough,
Godzilla.
King Ghidorah is a good guy, is a defender of the earth, is like an ancient spirit that protects the earth, an ancient monster that protects the earth. And Godzilla is the villainous menace. And this is like the most evil Godzilla they've had since Mothra versus Godzilla. And he's actually imbued with the souls of everyone who died in the Pacific War in World War II, who want vengeance against Japan for forgetting their sacrifices. It's like one of the best Godzilla designs they've done, because it's got this big, long, crocodilian-like head, and his eyes are all white. And
Godzilla kills them, including 4 people on a helicopter.
I mean, Godzilla kills a whole bunch of people, presumably.
They say in dialogue at one point, he's wiped out 90% of our army unit. And he destroyed. In my notes, I said that he even takes out a rocket launching vehicle and 1 battleship with unknowns amount.
Yeah, I mean, so I really like this one, and I would recommend people watch it because that's such a strange twist. That Godzilla contains these angry vengeful souls.
Doesn't he eliminate Mothra and Ghidorah at the very end, or at least their soul, or something like that?
They basically win to the point where they nullify Godzilla if they don't straight up defeat him. Because he is the bad guy. So they do overcome him, Ghidorah and Mothra together, I believe. So, you kind of get that sort of an ending. Because once again, it's all it is a sequel to Gojira. It ignored the other 2 that came before it in the series. So it's really a standalone effort. But yeah, I think it's a really cool idea to, make Ghidorah a good guy, team him up with Mothra, make Godzilla this sort of vessel of vengeance for the people lost in the Pacific. Those are all cool ideas, and I do think people should check this one out because again, Godzilla looks so dope in this. He looks so dope. He's got a big crocodile head.
He's good, I guess, because he's just so one-dimensional in this one. I guess I don't get anything out of him, but
so it actually is one of the first times it gives Godzilla motive. So that's why I don't see him as one-dimensional at all. This is the first time Godzilla has a motive for destroying Japan.
I just didn't recall that dialogue. I just recall just so many of the kids running around.
I don't remember the kids as strongly in this one. There are some kids, I think they're trying to unlock King Ghidorah. I remember that with an old man. I mostly remember it being a reporting crew, like a documentary crew, being the main characters in this film.
Yeah. I might rewatch. I'll definitely rewatch all of these at some point, but it was just one of those. It was
definitely recommend rewatching GMK. To me, it's a top 10.
All right. Godzilla against Mechagodzilla.
Lame title.
Yeah, nothing. No imagination in the title, but yeah, I recalled him not killing anybody in this movie. But yeah, so another one is just a very futuristic looking city in this, and humans, heavily armored, and is like in this update of it, it's like they're just trying to engineer just the perfect Mechagodzilla that can, help their forces. and put human pilots inside of it. Yeah. And I recall it being reasonable. And again, I don't recall any of the characters, but it was just one of those, it's like, they're just trying to stay modern and with all the other, Matrix type blockbusters at this time. And I recall the score being fun, but that's kind of where I just kind of got this mistaken with Megaguirus as well, just because I just watched them around the same time. This is where you got all this cyberpunk, Robotech type designs. And
yeah, Kuryu, which is what they call Mechagodzilla, and this one's a pretty cool design. And he's Mechagodzilla. He's built right over the skeleton of the original Godzilla from 1954. They had the skeleton, so they built the robot right over it for whatever reason. And some of the bones instincts kind of remain. And Kuryu, like, if he hears Godzilla's roar, sometimes Kuryu's like memory in his bones will come awake, and he'll kind of run amok as a robot. So it's an interesting little story. I don't mind the Kuryu movie. It's not one of my favorites of the Millennium series, but Kuryu is a cool design. So cool monster.
I mean, I know it's a really cool redesign for Mechagodzilla, but I cannot remember much of the plot at all.
That's kind of where I was. It was just popcorn.
Yeah, it's largely based on building Kuryu and then trying to tweak him after he goes crazy in hopes of him being able to fend off Godzilla.
Mm-hmm. And leads us to Tokyo SOS, which, again, this against Mechagodzilla are just both a blur to me. Just both came out around the same time. The Kamobas look very much almost like Megaguirus in a way. So, again, I get all 3 of those movies just locked into one thing, and just where it's like, I didn't remember the humans. I thought the whole fighting back. Plots were interesting, but it was just more just the style was kind of a bigger star than just kind of the movie itself. But I didn't mind it because at least it was engaging, and I want again, the staging and prepping before each part was cool. The humans didn't feel useless. But yeah, Tokyo SOS is this one, and again, you got Mothra here again, and the U.S. poster for like the title for the DVD version looked so cheesy, and it's like that's not how Godzilla looks in the movie. You're still using a mix of model work and CGI, and
well, this is the only entry in the Millennium series that's actually a sequel to another. This is a direct sequel to the last movie.
Yeah, and so that's why I get them blurred, because like you still got this, futuristic city.
The big difference in this is Mothra. They added Mothra,
Mm-hmm.
which is great if you love Mothra. Mothra is my favorite of all monsters, so I do not mind seeing Mothra. It can only make a movie better to add Mothra to it, in my opinion.
How do you feel about the building tension, having the humans race against the clock to, get the security defenses up and running? And
I don't remember a lot of the plot here. There seems like there's way more of a race against time in Godzilla against Mechagodzilla, because they really needed Kuryu to defeat Godzilla, or at least turn him away or repel him, which they succeeded doing at the end of that movie. And so it's kind of like, this is kind of like Rocky 2. Right, like Rocky, like Kuryu just went the distance against, like Kuryu just went the distance against Mechagodzilla, and so now what? Now we're gonna
apparently have the same exact humans, but I didn't know that.
Yeah, I think they do. For the most part, the big thing I remember is that Hiroshi Kazumi comes back for this movie, who was in the original Mothra movie, and he's playing basically his character again from that. So he kind of mentions the stuff that happened in the original Mothra movie, and that Mothra's there to protect them, and they redo the whole thing where they paint the big symbol on the airport runway so Mothra knows where to land. That's what I remember about this. So
I'll have to give it a rewatch, but yeah, I know what you mean, where it's like you're not going to remember the exact characters, but they're not going to annoy, and again, it's just all about the tension. So
yeah, well, I mean, with the Millennium series, I've seen the Millennium series a lot less than I've seen like the Showa series, because I grew up with the Showa series, and even the Heisei series.
Kind of.
And I feel like I've seen Tokyo SOS 3 or 4 times, so I don't remember it all that much compared to a lot of the other movies that I've seen, dozens of times. So it's not
compared
always
to against Mechagodzilla and Megaguirus, I definitely don't remember this one as much, and I would think I would remember it more because Mothra was third bill. Right. The poster, I mean, for God's sakes, has all 3 monsters deadlocked.
On paper, it's probably one that I would like more, but I'd have to really. It's probably one that is due for a rewatch for me.
It's just acceptable,
Well, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5 because it is Mothra.
No, all good.
And you can add Mothra to anything. If you put Mothra in the Bridges of Madison County, it would make that movie better.
So, here we go. Godzilla Final Wars, the final entry in the Millennium Era, also known as the one where Zilla, the bastard child from the 98 version of Godzilla, gets to make a cameo and get instantly defeated by Godzilla in this one. This one, I don't think of it so much as a movie as it is just a bunch of, animated cartoons and animes. It's not even so much a movie as it is just it's a chaotic music video minus the music, and you're just seeing a lot of these, future fighting force inside, robots, fighting a Godzilla and a bunch of other, pretty much a tribute to the whole saga. Just every creature you can imagine is appearing here. Hedorah, Caesar, Gigan, Mothra, and Rodan.
I mean, King Caesar, he kicks Anguirus like a soccer ball, and Anguirus goes, flying like a soccer ball right at Godzilla's head. It's
right. You got
it's
Monster X also. So yeah, it's the ultimate Kaiju tribute movie. really. I think this is a movie you want to just watch in just kind of segments because it just kind of goes from one place to the next. But I totally understand why this is often ranked as like one of the best of the best. I don't know. I just feel like it's trying to do so much, and at the same time, I don't have any problem with it. It's just kind of just a fun, relaxing movie, but not one I'm just like deeply invested in like the others. So, but like I say, the fanfare is all there. It's painted.
Yeah, I mean, to me, this is like big fan service, big fan pandering, which is not always a bad thing. I mean, this is, again, it was kind of, I think they thought it would be their last one. It's kind of a spiritual successor to Destroy All Monsters. It's basically a remake of Destroy All Monsters where the aliens, and they're called Exilians because they're also from Planet X, have come to Earth and have kidnapped several of our monsters and are able to use them against us, but they've gotten everyone but Godzilla. And so Godzilla basically has to have these one-on-one or eventually 2- and 3-on-1 showdowns against all of everybody's favorite show of monsters. And so to me, if I want just to watch like Godzilla with tons of action, I'd probably put on Final Wars. Where I just want to see 2 hours of nothing but Godzilla fights, I'd probably put on Final Wars. You get to see all your favorites. To me, it's definitely a nostalgia one. It's not a good one to start on. You should, if you're gonna watch them in chronological order of release, then Final Wars would be perfect because it'll be like the 35th one you've watched or something. So, so I like Final Wars. I do recommend it. It's like Destroy All Monsters, but then there's like sort of a Matrix-esque crazy futuristic fighting too. So like what the humans do isn't even boring because it's not talking. It's like nothing but martial arts fighting and alien stuff. So I mean, definitely nothing but a super fun nonstop action movie.
Right.
And
I just don't feel like anyone really has a persona, but at the same time, it is a lot of fun. And yet, I don't know. It's definitely.
What about What about the American captain, like with the mustache? He's got lots of personality. And he's like big and tough.
Oh yeah, and he's got an unusual fighting style. Yeah, he was interesting, especially because I think he was played by some famous semi-well-known. Martial artist.
He's played by somebody that people know, who I don't particularly know, but he was still real cool and liked to crush people's skulls, and it's got a cool theme song too. It's like it's an interesting theme song. So yeah, Final Wars is a cool one.
For sure. Daniel, did you see this?
This is it's candy for fans. It's fan servicey without the nudity. Just it's so much fun. Giant monster chaos. And I will say, Gigan looks awesome in this.
Yeah. When Gigan comes back, because Gigan appears originally and is defeated, and then when he comes back, he's got chainsaws for hands. And
that's a nice touch.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool redesign on him. And I like that they gave the little shout out to Gorath too, because when Ghidorah is coming in, they say he's a meteor named Gorath, which is a reference to an old Toho movie called Gorath about a meteor.
Right. Well, for sure. And so let us make our way to the final Japanese live action one, as well as the anime era. This is called the Reiwa era, 2016 to present. So we got Shin Godzilla, and it doesn't matter really what version you watch, dubbed or subtitled. It's pretty acceptable. It's not a plot you're gonna recommend, but I do like how, again, they just kind of try and make this look kind of more like a documentary, just like present day humans reacting to us, saying, you got to be kidding me. What do we do next to make the science, agree to where we can just finally just shove this guy back in his hole once and for all? And I like how they just kind of make it look like a historical recap while still having, camera angles and political intrigue that looks, it again just looks staged, just like the original 54 one, as well as modern and with the times, and kind of give an outlook on how Tokyo just cannot handle any more chaos. It's got to come to an end. What's your thoughts on this, guys?
I actually really like this. I mean, the Godzilla design was insane. It looks like he's on crack.
Right. He's
But-
just he's a deteriorated, past his prime giant rock that's still going.
But it was a really good return to formula for like the original in 1985, making him like a force of nature. And I actually really liked how they were using more contemporary influence. The original obviously was Hiroshima and Nagasaki. This was Fukushima.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think this one was so damn good. I think they should have called it Godzilla versus Bureaucracy. It really highlights the ineptitudes of leaders and experts in times of crisis, which, as we said, was a parallel to the Fukushima disasters. And I thought that was just a brilliant choice because, especially with the things they do in the movie, especially with how it ends, Godzilla they freeze him and he's just still there, and it's just a
United
ticking
Nations
clock
coming in. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just a ticking clock until he eventually does come out and do something. Like, it's going to loom over you until it eventually does come and kill you. I mean, all the choices were great. Godzilla's design is really creepy, but it's really ugly, like it's actually a return to a horror of Godzilla, which is, you don't really see since Gojira. Like, Gojira is actually, monstrous, right? He kind of has fangs and he's actually kind of scary and ugly. And so Shin kind of takes that back, where it's like, oh no, Godzilla's going to be sort of hard to look at, kind of hard to stomach. Gross, basically.
There's that, and they do it in a visual way where it's like, okay, writing's on the wall. This isn't just about how cool we can make this all look. It's telling you everything you need to know without, again, hammering it too much, making it feel, heavy-handed. Is like, okay, now I get it. It's like, and even the American drone strike's kind of interesting. Is like just showing us how every other country is at war with this thing, trying to,
and they have
intercede.
and Godzilla has his disco ball of death.
Yeah. It is interesting how they do the fire effects here. I don't really remember those as much as I do just how the political intrigue is just very intriguingly crafted, and showing how it's just, again, just all the best stuff. They're trying to always be, ahead of the game. There's just always interference, and then when they're catching up, there still is like they waited too long to unleash all these weapons,
Yeah, for me, this is a 5 out of 5. I think it's right up there with the original Gojira. And if you have the time, watch it the same day as you do the original Godzilla, and you'll see so many parallels. I mean, because the original Godzilla, there's a lot of
almost
bureaucracy too in the original Godzilla, and they're very complementary to each other.
Totally. I mean, same kind of framing and all. It's like basically used sped up to modern day.
And I believe this is the only Japanese movie that is not a sequel to the original Gojira either. So this is actually a standalone total reboot.
Which is wild, you think it would be, they're all connected in some way, but yeah, it's like, that's how they're playing it. Weird this continuity is. So, sorry guys, we're going slightly out of order here. Yeah, has anyone seen the anime films, Planet of the Monsters, City on the Edge of Battle, and The Planet
Eater? Yeah, I saw all 3 on Netflix. I think I have a nice Korean DVD set of them as well.
Oh, nice.
I mean, just kind of talking about them all at once. I don't like anime really. It's just
I've grown out of it, so I didn't implode with these as much, but I definitely thought Planet of the Monsters and Planet Eater were pretty watchable, and then City on the Edge of Battle I didn't really get into.
Yeah, City on the Edge of Battle is too talky. Like, Mechagodzilla is in it in that there's a city they call Mechagodzilla, but he's not a character. So that's largely annoying. But the first one, Planet of the Monsters, is really like another great return to form, right? Where they're trying to just defeat Godzilla. But in this case, it's like Godzilla has defeated all humanity. Humanity has retreated into space, trying to find a new planet to occupy. They fail to find it, and they come back to Earth and decide they're going to beat Godzilla and reclaim the Earth. There's nowhere else they can go. And Godzilla is the biggest Godzilla ever. I mean, he's like 3 or 4 times bigger than any Godzilla that's been shown in movies before, because they can do that with anime. And it's just this, another great story of humans versus Godzilla, who are one of Godzilla's best opponents. It's just humans trying to beat him, and they had come up with a very complex plan, and it seems like, they seem to,
right?
But they didn't get the real Godzilla. That's the great twist and reveal at the end. They didn't get the real actual giant Godzilla. Who's
I don't recall
even
that one. I just
bigger.
recall the other.
I mean,
crazy
yeah,
stuff
that's the ending of that first one. Is they beat one Godzilla, but then there's one that's like 5 times bigger than it, and he's the real original Godzilla.
those
And that's the
doppelgangers, man. They work.
well, it seems like he has some way to like split off or recreate. I've only seen this one a few times, but that's a big one that I remember of that first one, Planet of the Monsters.
Planet of the Monsters, everybody. So more or less, then we get into Legendary relaunched it in 2014. They had Gareth Edwards.
Well, just to finish up on the animes, though, City on the Edge of Battle is a bit talky and boring, but Planet Eater is really cool. Ghidorah is brought back into it.
He looks well designed.
It is well designed. Ghidorah is really dope in that one, and it kind of becomes a parallel about fanaticism and religion, which kind of the second one is too. So like the second and the third one are very complementary. Like you could watch the first one alone, but the second one and third one really kind of need each other. But yeah, the third one I think is worth watching, especially if you like Ghidorah. So super cool on that one.
For sure. Alrighty. That concludes it for now. I think they said they were going to do an anime TV series, but CGI anime. But for now, it brings us to the American version's second phase, where relaunch it. We got Gareth Edwards, Monsters and Star Wars Rogue One fame take on. Just relaunch again a Jurassic Park kind of storyline. An American soldier must redeem his scientist dad's death at the hands of Godzilla against various New York type cities, and there's this Mewtwo monster which is basically can conjure up electricity and everything. I saw that the biggest complaint with this is that everybody either didn't like the characters or they thought it just took forever to get anywhere. And see me,
it was long for what it was.
I guess. I mean, I thought it was just still in the style of just the 54 movie, to where there's something going on in the slower moments. So I just wasn't bored. But I'll let you guys take it on. What's the overall tell on this? Because this is just one of those no one can seem to agree on it, and it's just crazy.
That initial scene where the big guy comes out of the ocean was breathtaking. His foot stumps down, all the people in the airport just fall dead silent. That was brilliant. The ending was a total clusterfuck.
Really? No.
Just too much going on at once. The Mutos or Motus, or I forget how you pronounce it.
Muto.
Muto. Right? And but also just the whole atomic bomb, the romantic subplot. Just okay, enough. We want to see the big guys go at it. Just do it.
I mean,
all right.
First time I saw the movie, I was kind of disappointed, maybe because I just had something else in my head. But then I went back to the theater the next day and watched it again, and I liked it a lot more, and I've liked it more and more every time I've watched it since. It's beautifully directed by Gareth Edwards, and that's why I think this movie stands out. Is you don't get really to see Godzilla. Usually you have kind of long shots, medium shots of him rarely do you get like creative directorial choices in the way you frame him. So getting to see like his foot stomp down on the airport, like almost everything that happens in that airport scene, like where you can kind of vaguely see him through the smog, like there's just a lot of
how you're seeing even people look for the windows, and then one of the monsters crashes in through it.
There's water flowing up around their ankles because he's coming out of the ocean.
Right, yeah. There's just so many smart things in there. I'm pretty sure to me that the love plot does really fall away in the last act, and I don't remember much of the love plot in the last act.
I'll see. It was just kind of just kept basic, just like they were. You saw what was on their mind without them actually saying it. Just
Yeah,
saying,
I mean,
"We
he's
promise."
trying to get home to his wife and son, but like they don't get together till the end. The fights, I mean, they're a bit shorter. I don't think that CGI stuff lends itself as well to those big fights, compared to like Suitmation. But I really like the design of the Mutos. They really grew on me. I love their EMP abilities because that makes them such a unique challenge for the U.S. military. So even though they look like Cloverfield rejects, I really liked them. If I do think the movie has a weakness, I think it suffers from having Godzilla be this ancient natural alpha predator rather than a man-made consequence of like nuclear proliferation. I think that's kind of losing the thread of the original one. Like, Godzilla's not an ancient protector or avenger or something like that. He is something we made ourselves that will inevitably destroy us. So while I like Godzilla as a hero, he feels like a big lizard Batman in this movie.
Yeah.
Well, David S. Goyer did do some of the rewrites, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I know what
so
you mean.
pretty, so pretty a movie though, so good. It's
Yeah.
just so gorgeous.
I mean, the CGI, yeah, like you say, the CGI will never replace like regular monster fights, and yeah, it's really not as critical about mankind, having to pay for its lessons. Really not at all. I guess I like how there's some military action in this, but other than the guys in the strategy room, you're not going to remember any of them, and you definitely won't remember their names. I guess I like how the strategy is played out. I like how, again, you got I think the problem is we've just seen so many of these tropes, so I guess I just liked how Gareth just got to the chase with them instead of just drawing it out and showing extended stuff in the hospital. But, I mean, don't get me wrong, I think Kong Skull Island is way better executed, but this one, I mean, I just didn't mind. I haven't already seen what Gareth had done with monsters and later with Rogue One, but I know everyone just seems to just vary entirely on each of those, so I just, you either like it or you hate it.
I don't know anyone who doesn't like Rogue One, and I don't want to know anyone who doesn't like Rogue One either.
I know, that's the sad thing. I have a lot of these guys who like these kinds of movies, and for whatever reason, they just almost always,
And Skull Island, I know it's not part of the series. I do like Skull Island. I think it has a lot of the right elements there. Especially love John Goodman. As kind of he's sort of the impetus of getting everyone to the island. But something about it in the third act, kind of like Sam Jackson's soldier, like obsessed with war thing, kind of drags the final act to me. And I think the skull crawlers that Kong fights have a lot less personality than the Mutos do in Godzilla. So between the two, I would take Godzilla because as pretty as it is seeing Kong stand there as the helicopters are coming at him, like nothing compares to like the halo jump in Godzilla where they're all, jumping out of the plane down to him and passing by Godzilla.
That is a well executed. Then we got King of the Monsters, which, they even got a cover of Blue Oyster Cult at the very end, and
with Serge Tankian.
I didn't even know who that was by then.
Yeah, well, Serge Tankian is lead singer of System of a Down, or he was. So
okay.
He's the one singing the cover there.
Damn.
Yeah, Bear Grylls does all the music in that one.
Damn. So yeah, we got Michael Gordy, Krampus, Trick or Treat from 2007, the X-Men films, working on this. And long story short, I'm going to get a lot of points taken off this. This directly follows the previous one. It brings all the scientist characters you know and liked. You know, Bradley Whitford's really amusing in it. I didn't enjoy this at all, but I understand why people will like it. For me, a whole bunch of terrorist freedom fighters. It kind of goes into Deep Blue Sea territory, where it's like just it's a, you know, mom and dad scientists, you know, kind of dividing their loyalty to their kid who's also in the middle of this, and it's just messy. It's like almost as messy as Megalon, where it's just like, not Megalon, Megalon, where it's like where it's just like, somebody, could you just divided this movie up a bit more? And
yeah, there was a lot of this one. The first one was too slow. There was too much. It was so much chaos.
And there's nothing to the characters. And I like Kyle Chandler and, you know, this gal from Stranger Things. I'm not into that show, but I like the actress. And this is like, and Vera Farmiga.
Millie Bobby Brown.
Yeah, that's who it is. Sorry, Millie. I didn't know your name. But yeah, it's like Vera Farmiga. It's just her character literally makes no sense at all. I don't know why she's so obsessed with them. She gets all these other humans killed. So it's like, damn you, movie. And the movie seems to be just very ignorant of her ignorance, let alone just no emotion. I'm like, so am I just supposed to have any kind of skin in the game and what happens to anything? And I feel like Godzilla gets a little less screen time. I know everyone was like, oh, he got more screen time. I'm like, no, I think it's about the same. I'm not seeing much difference. So in these movies, I prefer the suspenseful angle of where you're just seeing his shadow or tail, but not the full thing. But I mean, I'll let you take it away. Why do people like this and why do people hate it?
Well, they like it because it's kaiju fun, you know, giant monster mayhem. Hate it because just there was so much potential here. Like some of the early shots we saw of like Mothra was so gorgeous, but she barely features.
You got the Queen of the Muchos here, but I guess I will say, I will give him this. King Ghidorah is well animated. I don't mind his fight. It's just, we got to see all the humans in the middle of the fight interrupting it so often. So that, and I don't know. Bradley Whitford's moment where he's just imitating Godzilla like a typical Japanese thing was funny in the trailer, but then you see it in the movie and it's barely, you know, even in the shot. They're using a different cut. I'm like, damn it. I remember it killed when we would get to the theater early and we saw the trailer and him just doing his version of, you know, the stereotypical mouthing of the name Godzilla. But had they taken the freedom fighter out of the movie, I think you'd have a better polished movie.
Yeah, that subplot drew a lot off.
It became let's see who we can get from any HBO Netflix show, because that's the only way we're getting funded.
Yeah, this one disappointed me when I saw it in theaters. You know, I think I gave a talk before this one. Yeah, they had me make some sort of little lecture, and then I got to actually watch the movie, and I was like, I remember laughing a lot. Like I wanted to riff it. Had I not been in public theater, I would have riffed it.
I did too. Me and my friend, we were just making like jokes. Oh, of course, you know, what's his name from Last Samurai? He's going to sacrifice himself. And finally, someone right next to us said, "Hey, man, can you just shut the hell up?"
See, that's why I don't riff in public theaters. I think it'll maybe grow on me more in time, mostly because I'm good at ignoring things I don't like, or really justifying them in different ways. Like, the human motivations are totally senseless. I mean, the woman, the mother, she loses her son, so she's going to let loose all of the kaiju because they bring a balance back to the earth. And it just so happens that she made the mistake of releasing Ghidorah first. Technically she released Mothra first, and then her second one is Ghidorah, and that it was her mistake. She didn't know that Ghidorah was an alpha, which it's like, he's a big giant golden dragon. You really didn't think?
Right.
So, that's pretty senseless. Pretty much everything the humans do is sort of dumb and annoying, I think, except for Dr. Serizawa. I like that Dr. Serizawa does, he goes down and he, releases the nuclear bomb to revive Godzilla. I like that. It's kind of a redemption story. Dr. Serizawa is that's the name of the guy who killed Godzilla originally in the 54. So being able to have Serizawa go down there and save Godzilla this time, that's sort of a nice little kind of Easter egg. Or
it's a good bunch of irony because he's he's got to kickstart the whole thing. He's got to give his life just to make this monster reawaken and then fight,
Yeah, but I mean, of course, given the, conditions that they were explaining in there, he'd have never made it there with that bomb. He would have died. But so most of the human stuff does really annoy me, not just in that it's stories, but like I hate when the monsters and the humans interact. I hated when Ghidorah would like look through the window and see Millie Bobby Brown. It's like monsters didn't really notice people. Kaiju don't really notice individual people, unless they're gargantuas or something.
And we're still not sure what to even think of them at this point. So it's like, okay, it doesn't serve a purpose just having a money shot.
Well, no, at that point, Ghidorah was definitely established as a bad alpha male. He'd already killed Godzilla and everything at that point. So we knew exactly what he was going to do. But it was just like... Why would
Ghidorah,
King Ghidorah... Why would King Ghidorah
but I mean, there's no
look
persona.
into this window at her? Why doesn't he just blow up the entire building? Like, why would he look in it was another Jurassic Park ape, right? It was like where the T-Rex looks into the car window. It was exactly that. And it's like, ooh, scary moment. The monster sees us. And it's like, yes, but at this point, if the monster sees you, you are dead. And then you've got her running for half a minute, dodging Ghidorah's like gravity beams. And it's like, no. Like, this is not something you can dive a few inches out of the way of and you're okay. That's going to send you flying.
Right.
So all of that was bad. But when I try to look at the good in it, the actual monster stuff is pretty cool. The design of Mothra and Rodan are very interesting, especially Mothra with her little hidden stinger. I love Rodan being made of like molten rock. And then there's a lot of the little side monsters. Those have a lot of merit. There's kind of like there's like a big tusked monkey one and a few other creepy little.
Is that Behemoth?
Behemoth, I think he might be called Behemoth. And there's a
mammoth.
Yeah. He's like a mammoth, but he's kind of got ape arms almost.
This movie was trying to go all Lord of the Rings with the kind of just giant battles, and I don't know. Pretty much a nitpick I had is it was just too much like Pacific Rim, where it's like all of it's in the dark. You can't make out half the shit that's going on, and by the third half,
Pacific Rim, but
okay, well.
No, I mean I do.
Sorry.
I like Pacific Rim, but I see your point in them kind of trying to copy it. My problem too is Ghidorah. Yes, Ghidorah is a big golden dragon, but Ghidorah has always been bipedal, right? It's always been a man.
I don't have a problem with the designs. I just the way they're staged and they're in the dark, and it's supposed to be suspenseful and artistic, and it just looks just not as inspired because I don't know. Mike Gordy, I mean, he already did Trick or Treat, which was kind of John Carpenter inspired. Then he did Krampus, which is a total, Gremlins love letter. And with this, it just feels like he's just doing what Gareth was doing, but being less inspired. These guys are, and
far less inspired.
But by the third act, it's basically a Transformers movie where you're just like, please just end already.
Yeah, and maybe one of the early Transformers, because I like most of the late Transformers movies.
Oh yeah,
Age of Extinction and Last Night and Bumblebee. I like those ones. Let's get Shia LaBeouf out of there.
Well, Bumblebee's definitely the one where it's just like, just make an actual Transformers movie instead of just do too much. I mean, but I know
whoever that lead, I can't remember who the lead character in Bumblebee was. I couldn't see him the whole time.
Yeah, that's true. And it was kind of just be campy and be like an actual 80s movie.
I mean, the Decepticons were never going to be able to beat Big Match John.
John Cena sucks.
So yeah, King of the Monsters. I want to like it, but I don't. And frankly, it doesn't.
Most monsters, but
and it doesn't give me good hopes for Kong Godzilla. I mean,
I have hopes, but I know what you mean. Yeah, after that was coming out, I was like, fuck this whole thing. But I mean, it's already kind of bad enough in that, you're doing a remake of an epic, often talked about installment. But at the same time, I think, Adam Wingard, he's done a lot of these creative movies that are basically action horror comedies, like You're Next and The Guest. So I'm sure he'll be inspired, but at the same time, I'm not bashing any of these guys because I know that what they're doing is essentially, they're all indie filmmakers who are becoming bigger names. So, what happens when you're a indie guy turned giant professional is you're basically now a famous mercenary,
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not going to hold the
you
guys.
have creative, restrictions still imposed on you by the studio. And at this case, it's going to likely be on HBO Max at the same time as a limited, theater or no theater. It doesn't matter, So if they can have the best moments of Kong Skull Island and the best moments of these two Godzillas, I'm fine with that. I know basically all the humans from both are going to return. I'm okay with that because at least we don't have this stupid female scientist evil mom.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that we know it's going to be is it's probably going to be a giant kaiju BVS, right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
They're going to fight a little, and then they're going to team up at the end. Kong's going to be choking Godzilla, and Godzilla's going to be like, "You're letting them kill Mothra," and then they're going to have to team up, and
that'll actually definitely be interesting if they decide to go there, because I mean, that's what most versus movies end up doing anyway,
Right, because they can't just commit to, at least having someone beat some butt. But hopefully they at least do a lot of fights, and the team up is only in like the last 10 minutes.
Can Kong have a Caesar of Planet of the Apes style thing where he's like, "There's more of me"?
I mean, maybe. He was supposed to be a race of Kongs, but I mean, I don't know if any. In the Japanese one, they gave Kong some different powers so that he could really compete against Godzilla, and I don't know.
At least make him Gamera a joke or something. Hey,
what they're going to be able to do to make Kong.
Maybe he can communicate with the humans doing, Coco style.
Oh, that'd be great. People love it. Bad gorilla. Bad gorilla.
Follow us on the web on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The podcast is available on Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Anchor, Apple, and anywhere else podcasts are available. Feel free to review our show and leave comments on any of those sites. Thanks a million for listening.
It's a jacked up